Hello everyone, welcome to What If Belle Stool, the Heart of the Goddess of Justice Astrea Movie 5. Before we start, please go support Astrea9 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken characters' gender, but of course Belle is a male. Chapter 68. The beginning of the war. The sun was rising in the city of Orario, a sign that another day was beginning. Although it wasn't just any day. That day was a decisive one for the whole city. An event was about to begin that could have many outcomes, many more tragic than good. The city of Orario was about to enter a final war against Evilis, a war that would decide the fate of all. The war that would be the outcome of many important things. That was the reason why the big city was almost completely silent. They knew something very serious was coming, so they just prayed and hoped things would turn out well. Although things were different on the enemy side. At the very bottom of Knossos. In one of the many rooms, a man with black hair and scars on his face opened his eyes, revealing how red they were, like blood. He usually wore a mocking or crazy look, but this time he just looked calmly at the empty room he was in. He never fully understood Knossos. It was wrong of him to say so, but the old man who built it was crazy, although he admired his dedication. Meow. Well, he wasn't alone. In that room there was also a small cat who was waking up next to him, letting out a big yawn. He laughed with that same crazy laugh that characterized him. You do sleep a lot. Why do you have a cat with you? The doors to the room were opened by Lilith, who looked puzzled at the cat that was next to its leader. You're not going to believe this, but I found him wandering around Knossos yesterday. I don't know how he got in, she said with amusement, watching the kitten as it began to walk around the room. I'm surprised the monsters fused with spirits that roam the floors of Knossos didn't attack him. It's small, maybe it went unnoticed, Lilith said dismissively. Why do you have it with you? Sometimes the company of a little animal is more pleasant than that of a person, even though they can't talk, she whispered, looking at the cat, which after walking for a few minutes, returned to where Sava was and fell asleep next to her. Are you saying that my company isn't pleasant? Ha. I didn't mean that, you're one of the few people I like in this world, obviously you're not on that list. I understand, I whispered, looking away. And also Fulax, Gretel, also Abel, who, although I haven't known him for very long, I like him. What? Nothing, he said, bored. So what do you want? Sava asked curiously. Knossos has already been found. His smile only grew wider upon hearing those words. Well, finally. For a moment I thought about sending them a note with the coordinates, because at this rate we'd be back by Christmas, and they still wouldn't have found him, he said, amused by how long it had taken them to find him. At least I know things will be lively around here soon. What's the plan? I asked, ready to obey any order from Sava. Lilith gave him her complete loyalty. She would follow him anywhere, no matter what. There's no plan, Sava whispered, stroking the cat. Just use your 2 spells and let things unfold on their own. My 2 magics. Of course Althea is here, so we have to keep her out of this game. We don't want to be checkmated right from the start. That woman is someone you should never take lightly, and with your other magic, just let her do what she has to do and start the game. Is that really your plan? You've known me for years, Lilith, you know very well that I never think about those things that much, she said with a slight smile, listening to the cat purr. Well, if that's what you want, I accept the order. Stop treating me like that. Aren't we family? I asked with that twisted smile. Well, yes. Then treat me like one, Lilith, she whispered, looking down. By the way, where are Fulax? He is on the 6th floor of Knossos receiving magic from some of our members, he is absorbing it. Really? Well, tell that idiot not to absorb so many. We don't know if his magic has limits. If it does, he'll blow himself to bits, she said, letting out a soft laugh. Gretel. Floor 8 commanded by a group of monsters fused with creatures. Abel. Somewhere on the 15th floor of Knossos, he spends all his time there since he merged with a spirit. I feel really sorry for that boy. You can see he's suffered a lot in his life, and the only thing keeping him going is wanting to get revenge on little Belle, although I'm more pathetic, hahaha. Do you think I have a chance of beating your nephew? Haha, who knows, I whispered excitedly. And Gassy? It's been a week and he hasn't returned, I think it's more than obvious that he's dead. First Noah, then Hansel, and now Gassy. My family is getting smaller and smaller. For a brief moment, Sava's smile faded into a dull expression, though she immediately smiled again. I feel like I'll be with them soon too. Yours? And what will you do, Lilith? Me? Well, I'll take Apophis out of his room and we'll have fun together on the floors, it will be exciting, replied the girl, excited to free her greatest creation. Really? Well, also bring out that thing you have on the 3rd floor. Do you want me to release her? Lilith asked, not very sure. That thing is so strong that even I can't control it. It was the only monster I fused with a spirit superior to the lesser ones, its power is abysmal. So? This is a party, so we have to go all out, he said playfully. Well, if you say so, he whispered, already knowing how suicidal his friend was in some of his plans. And what will you do? Me? I'll be here with my cat. Are you serious? And? Ha ha ha. And as was obvious, Sava began to laugh at that silence, causing Lilith to bring her hand to her face and shake her head slightly. Although seconds later she also started laughing along with him. Soon the war would come to them in Knossos, and they would welcome it with open arms. On the surface. At the headquarters of the Ganesha family. Many members were preparing to go down to Knossos, among them Aki, who was already in her battle attire, and with her were two of her friends, Alicia and Cruz. I'm so sorry I can't come with you, but with only one arm I'll be a nuisance, Cruz apologized to the cat. Don't worry, Cruz, you have to take care of Mr. Gareth, Aki said with a slight smile. And don't make that face, Alicia. I already told you not to feel guilty because you're not going. But I feel like a coward for not going with you and fighting for our family, she said sadly. I'm scared. Alicia hadn't lived in the dark age like Aki, so she wasn't as used to seeing so many deaths and still being able to stay strong. Don't feel bad, friend, the cat whispered, approaching the elf and giving her a hug. I'll feel more at ease knowing you're here on the surface, just leave the work to me, Miss Riveria will do her part too. Please, Aki, come back alive from that place, said Alicia, struggling not to cry. Promise me. I'm not going to promise you, but I'll try, he said, pulling away from the hug and looking at her with a smile. And if I happen to die, I'll be able to see you all again, Rawl. Don't say that. I'll do my best to survive, I wouldn't want to leave you alone, he said, patting her on the head. If I didn't know them I'd think it was a couple's farewell, Cruz whispered with an anime-style sweat drop. Shut your mouth, Cruz. Sorry. Are you ready to leave here? At that moment, a certain woman with short white hair approached them with a slight smile. Hi, Denev, Aki greeted, also smiling. Since they had both been in that hell down there on that mission, they had become close friends, comrades who shared the feeling of being close to death and suffering the death of a loved one on the same day. Let's do our best down there, said Denev, raising her fist and bumping it with Aki's. Of course, my friend. After that, the cat curiously observed the imposing spear that Denev was carrying in her hand. By the way, wasn't that Alan's spear? He asked curiously. Upon hearing the question, Denev stared at the spear with a nostalgic smile. I was able to retrieve it down there, I took it to the goddess Freya personally to deliver it, although it was very difficult to get her stupid children to let me see it, but in the end I did. And what did he say to you? She told me that the person I had to give that spear to was Anya, since she was her sister, so I went to her, she whispered with a sad smile. And Anya gave it to me. She said her brother's spear would be better in my hands. Wow, that's touching. It is. I feel like Alan is fighting alongside me, she said, still with that faint smile on her face. I will strive for all our fallen comrades, I will give my all in this war. Me too, we have to give our 100%. Why? I said no, RD. At that moment, their conversation was cut short by an argument as they watched RD and Shakti arguing. Why not, Shakti? RD, please understand, you will not go to Knossos, Shakti said, looking seriously at her sister. But I've worked so hard in Galatia Sensei's training for this day. I have to go. She shouted, not happy with her older sister's decision. We're not going to an amusement park, we're going to war. I know that. Don't you trust me? I didn't say that. Well, it seems so. You think I'm a useless person who will only get in the way of her colleagues. RD. It doesn't matter what you say. I'm going to Knossos whether you like it or not. And with those words, the lesser Varma ran away from the place. RD, wait. Shakti tried to stop her, but Denev's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Shakti, let her go, Denev whispered. I can see that she wants to help from the bottom of her heart. I know, but RD is no longer a child, she is someone strong, trust her. I understand your concern, but we need as many people as possible in this war. Who knows, maybe RD will do something to turn this critical moment around. Fine, but I'll tell her not to leave my side, he said, reluctantly agreeing to let her go. I almost lost her a few years ago, and I don't want to lose her for good. Don't worry, that won't happen. While they were talking, they were being watched by the 3 former members of the Loki family. Being an older brother is tough, Cruz whispered. It is, although I don't have any siblings, Alicia added. You were the oldest sister in the family, the boy said. It's not the same. I'll do my best, Aki thought, clenching her fists. Watch me, Rawl. Meanwhile, in another part of the city. Thank you very much for accepting my request, Goddess Astrea. And at the headquarters of the family of justice, a certain jade-haired elf was in the hall, thanking the goddess of said family, and beside her was a blonde girl with a downcast and dull gaze. Don't worry Riveria, you and the Loki family helped us a lot when we were starting out in the city. I would never refuse to help you, it will be a pleasure to have you with us, said the goddess with a kind smile, something characteristic of her. Even so, please excuse my boldness in coming in the middle of the night to ask for your fauna, but I didn't know what to do, and you were the only one I could turn to. Thank you for helping me and Ace, were the words of the high elf. Riveria, after thinking about it many times, made the decision to ask the goddess Astrea for her fauna so that she could participate in that war in honor of all her family who had fallen in battle, and fortunately the goddess accepted her request. Although he didn't know what to do after that war if he survived, he was still undecided about whether to permanently join the family of justice or simply abandon all these adventure things and take care of Ace. Thinking about it, Riveria, like Astrea, turned their gaze to the girl who still had her head down, not saying a word. She seemed like an empty shell. Ace, right? Astrea said with a warm smile. I can give you a tour of the headquarters so you can get to know the place. Riveria's expression turned to one of sadness when she saw that Ace did not respond. Since the Loki family had fallen, Ace had not said a single word and had not even raised her head, maintaining that empty look in her eyes. For a moment the elf thought that she wanted revenge and that she would be insisting on going to that war. But it was quite the opposite. He seemed like an empty shell, a soulless body that just moved. The death of her entire family had truly affected Ace, and that was what saddened Riveria the most, as she tried everything to get her to talk a little, but she couldn't achieve anything. His daughter had fallen into a deep depression. Ace will stay with you and the goddess Hera while we are in Knossos, please take care of her, Riveria asked, worried about the girl. Don't worry, I'll take care of her, so go into battle in peace, the goddess promised. After the war, you can stay as long as you like at my headquarters and even become permanent members of my family if you wish. Thank you for your offer, I'll think about it. Riveria was still undecided about it since she had no idea what to do. Gareth was still in a coma and she didn't know when he would wake up. Ben had bought prosthetics with his savings to keep walking, although he didn't know what he would do. Cruz said he wouldn't look for any family until Gareth woke up, and Alicia and Aki had joined the Ganesha family. The few survivors had gone their separate ways and she had to choose one, although currently her main focus was on Ace and getting her out of that deep depression that was killing her inside. She didn't want to see her like that. At that moment, another little blonde girl timidly approached them, specifically Ace. Hello Harahim greeted, a little nervous as she stood in front of Ace. My name is Harahim. Riveria just watched Harahim's futile attempts to talk to Ace. It was clear in the girl's eyes that she wanted to be her friend, but Ace had no intention of any of that. Harahim approached her, her lifeless gaze reminding her of the hopelessness she felt when she was locked in that cage in the pleasure district. She could clearly see the immense suffering in her eyes, and this was the urge to reach out and speak. Don't be sad, Harahim, she's going through a difficult time, Astrea tried to cheer up, seeing how the girl's ears drooped slightly when she couldn't get Ace to talk to her. How about you show her the headquarters? That would be a great idea, Riveria said, wanting Ace to spend time with a girl her own age. Maybe that way she'd finally be able to talk. Why don't you go with her? The little girl, although she didn't say anything, started walking towards Harahim so that she could begin to guide her through the headquarters. Oh okay, let's go, said Harahim, hoping the journey wouldn't be uncomfortable. So both girls started walking and left the room, leaving both women behind. I'm so sorry, Astrea apologized sadly. Ace is barely a child to have gone through all that. Although she never said it and showed she loved her family, their loss was a hard blow for her, just as it was for me, whispered the elf, sadness evident in her eyes. Riveria still couldn't get over the death of her entire family, but she stayed strong just for Ace, because if she broke down, she didn't know what would happen to the girl. Don't worry, I'm sure that little girl will smile soon, Astrea said with a warm smile. It will be a pleasure to have you live here. Thank you, Goddess Astrea. After that, Riveria looked around the room, noticing that there were a few other people there besides the two of them. Kagaya was sitting on a sofa calmly cleaning her katana. Hera was sitting on another sofa reading a book, and out of the corner of her eye, she was watching Kagaya with a certain anger. And lastly there was Althea, who was standing in front of a window looking out at the garden. If you'll excuse me, said Riveria, moving away from Astrea and approaching Althea. As Riveria got closer, she positioned herself beside him and looked at the garden next to her. What do you want? Althea asked sharply. Hello Althea, the elf greeted calmly. Your sudden arrival in the city really surprised me. What? Are you going to kick us out of the city like you did years ago? The woman asked again, still looking at the garden. I truly regret what happened in the past, Riveria whispered, lowering her gaze. I'm not here to make excuses, since in the end I also accepted their exile, but it was your goddess and the hobbit's idea, right? Yes, I accept. But in the end, I also accepted, so I'm guilty. "I don't care if you're guilty or not, all that doesn't matter to me," he said, turning to look at her. "If it mattered to anyone, it would be Hera, since she's much more resentful than I am." Upon saying those words, both turned to look at the woman who was almost tearing her book apart, glaring angrily at Kaguya who was also looking at her with a kind smile. "That's all in the past now. I've done plenty of questionable things myself," he whispered, remembering his nephew and sister's face. "Like I said, I don't care, so don't come looking for my forgiveness. I won't give it to you because I don't hold any resentment towards you. It was years ago, after all." Reveria was a little surprised by the woman's response, as she remembered her from the past as someone very resentful. But now it was different. "Well," Rivera whispered, looking down. "And thank you. For saving my life and Ace's life that night from that clown. If it weren't for you we would be dead." Reveria clearly remembered that event, her kneeling and hugging Ace, about to be crushed by Gassie's hammer when Alpheus suddenly appeared. He was still surprised by how quickly he killed the clown, since he was strong, but Alphea made him look like he was the weakest of them all. "Don't thank me, I didn't go there to save you, I just happened to be passing by that place. If I attacked that clown it was because I didn't like him and I felt he was from Evilus. Even so, thank you so much. Thanks to you, I'm still alive," I whispered, feeling a little amused by the woman's response. "With you in this war, I feel a little calmer. If I were you, I wouldn't trust you." Evilus has proven to be capable of many things, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a trick up their sleeve in Knossos or something like that. You were overconfident once and the result was the downfall of your entire family, don't make the same mistake twice, Alpheus said, turning to look at the elf with a serious expression. "You're right, Evilus shouldn't be taken lightly," Reveria whispered, turning to look at the garden and slightly clenching her fists. "I had to do something in that war. For his family. And by Ace. All I expected from all of that was that at the end of the day. Everything turned out alright." Meanwhile, in another part of the headquarters. In Bell's room. He was finishing putting on his battle suit. Bell didn't use any kind of armor, since his master never used any, he decided to follow her style as he felt more comfortable. His battle suit was a garment that Iska had given him that was much more resistant than normal ones, and it was also very comfortable. He really liked it. Iska had done a lot for him. Practically all his clothes were made by her, and he was truly grateful. Bell slowly walked to a corner of his room and took the dark sword, the last weapon let forged for him before he died. I slowly placed it on her waist and then observed the sickle that was also there. Just seeing her reminded me of the large number of people she killed with that weapon in cold blood, and that to this day she felt no remorse for the grotesque ways in which she murdered them. No, not this time. Despite it having been his reliable weapon in his most difficult moments, he decided not to carry the sickle with him. He wasn't going to cause a massacre like in the past. He was just going to settle family scores and put an end to that war once and for all. His sword alone was enough for that day. Or so he said. If he lost control, things would get complicated down there. "If only you were in good condition," she whispered, looking at the shattered sword she kept in her cabinet, the sword her teacher had given her. Although he didn't remember much, he had vague memories of her, like how she gave him that sword, although he felt a slight pain as he remembered how he cried in front of a tomb and she came to hug him. He didn't remember that moment very well and it stressed him out a little, so he decided not to try any harder to remember. After getting dressed and taking his sword, Bell walked towards his bed and noticed a leaf that was there. It was his statement. That morning he had asked his goddess to update his Falnet to see if anything had changed in him, thanks to the grimoire his aunt had given him. "And reading that book definitely changed me. But this magic," she whispered, beginning to read. Bellcranel. Race. Creature. Age. 18 years. Level. 6. Statistics. Force. G200. Agility. G340. Dexterity. H180. Resistance. G299. Magic. The 99. Development skills. Hunter S. Abnormal, resistance S. Swordsman A. Skills. Win-lose. One of the user's stats is boosted by 1 level in exchange for reducing another stat by 1 level. Both the boosted and reduced stats are chosen randomly. The effects last for 3 minutes and you must wait another 3 minutes before using it again. Sword of Light. The user concentrates a large portion of their energy into one arm, allowing them to attack with their weapon at high speeds without stopping. Constant use increases the strain on the arm being used. Bloatin. The user's stats increase when they eat magic stones. The more stones they consume, the stronger they become. Spells. Judgment of the Stars. The user unleashes a powerful magic that falls from the sky, and depending on the damage received from their opponent, the damage they will receive will be determined. The more damage, the more powerful and dangerous it will be. After reading his status sheet, Belle sat on the bed. When Astrea updated her status, she could see how she smiled slightly, not understanding why at first, but now she did. That magic was in honor of her goddess judgment of the stars, it was more than obvious that it was related to her, and that made her happy. Honestly, he felt the same way about having something related to his goddess, as it made him feel closer to her. When he read the grimoire and had that strange dream, all he asked for was powerful magic to protect his loved ones and put an end to that war. Perhaps he had lost Kamid Azure, but he had regained powerful magic, and at least this one didn't consume his life energy, although it probably would consume a lot of magic, but that was the least of his worries. After looking at his status sheet for a few more seconds, he put it aside and stood up. It was almost time for everyone to leave for Knossos, so I had to go to the hall. Okay, let's go. Hahaha. And with that whisper and that laugh in his head, Belle opened his bedroom door and left. He was no longer the same. He was no longer the boy who arrived in Orario a few months ago. That boy who smiled with joy, wanting to see the positive side of things and help others. That was in the past, just like that smile. Now only that serious expression remained on his face. He went from being a cheerful, kind-hearted boy to a disturbed individual prone to becoming a psychopath. It was very curious how much had changed in his time there in Orario, the city where one can fulfill dreams. We need to go crazy. His inner self was excited about everything that could happen downstairs. And Belle's blood was boiling, ready for anything. The war against Evilus was just a few steps away. Belle-sama. As Belle walked through the corridors, he could see two blonde girls walking towards him, one with a happy smile on her face and the other with an empty expression. Seeing little Ace in that state, for some reason he couldn't help but think that her look resembled his own in some ways. "Hello Haraham," Belle greeted the girl in a soft voice with a slight smile. Even though he had told Althea that he would never again act in a forced manner with Haraham, he would not behave in a serious and boring way with the girl. "What are you doing?" "I'm showing Ace the headquarters," said the girl with a small sparkle in her eyes, believing she was making a friend. Upon mentioning the blonde Belle, he turned his gaze to her, seeing how she still had her head down and those dull eyes. Just by looking at them, I could see that many things had been taken from him. He was someone who had suffered a lot for his young age. "Ace. It's a pleasure to meet you," Belle whispered in a soft, warm voice. But even so, Ace did not respond. She seemed like an empty shell, as she only moved and said absolutely nothing. "He's a man of few words," Haraham said, a little nervously. "I understand," Belle whispered, feeling sorry for the little girl. "Then keep showing Ace around the headquarters. I'm sure she'll like it." "Of course. I'll make sure you enjoy your trip," the little girl agreed, striking a military pose. Seeing that made Belle feel a little warmth in his heart. Although the other children in the pleasure district died that night, Haraham survived, and although it was by luck she was still there, he could clearly see how she overcame her traumas and transformed into that cheerful girl who was in front of him. That made him feel happy. "Take care," Belle whispered, stroking Haraham's hair, who smiled happily as her tail wagged. "And you too, Ace." He did the same with Ace, who didn't react at all. "Alright, let's continue the tour," Haraham said, starting to walk, followed by Ace. Belle just watched, hoping that the little girl would soon regain her smile, although from her expression, it was clear that she was someone who didn't smile very often. Whatever it was, I hoped he would recover. "It's useless." But before Belle could take a step, he stopped when he heard a muffled voice. "It's useless for them to go to that war." Belle turned around, seeing Ace staring at him with that empty look. "Everyone down there is going to die." And with that last whisper, Ace turned around and continued walking to catch up with Haraham, who didn't even realize she had fallen behind. Meanwhile, Belle just stood there processing the girl's last words. He was certainly right, it was very likely that many would die down there, but what would a war be if there were no deaths? It was almost a given that it would happen. Although he knew it was impossible, he would do everything possible to prevent it and save as many people as possible, or, though it may sound selfish, only the people who are important to him. If necessary, he would give his life in battle so that everyone would return home safely. That was one of the impulses that kept him going. His family was the engine that still made him walk. They meant everything to him, and he would never allow anything bad to happen to them down there. If one of them died, he would go completely insane, and there would be nothing that could stop him. That's why if anyone had to die in that war, it was him and no one else. "Whatever the outcome, you will all return, I promise." And with those thoughts, Belle continued walking through the corridors towards the room to meet with the others before going to Knossos. But as expected, he encountered someone else on the path, stopping to look at that girl. "Belle?" That girl was Rihanna, who was coming out of her room in her adventurer's outfit, probably also heading to the living room. The girl just stared at the albino in surprise, feeling a bad feeling when she saw him dressed like that and with his sword at his waist. Why are you dressed like that? I asked, hoping it wasn't what I was thinking. Belle had not yet told them that he was going to participate in the final war. Are you going to train in the yard? I asked with a slight smile, hoping that was it. No, Belle whispered his reply. I'm going to Knossos too. Upon hearing those words, Rihanna felt a pain in her heart and lowered her gaze. And no, you won't go to that place. Rihanna. No, I don't want to, she continued whispering while trembling slightly. Why you have to stay with Astrea-sama? I can't. Rihanna, I'll be fine. No. She exclaimed, raising her gaze, which reflected sadness and worry. You told me the same thing that day. That you'd be alright and that you'd return to headquarters, you promised me. Belle couldn't help but feel a slight pain in his heart as he saw small tears threatening to escape from the girl's eyes. Why, you have no idea of the enormous pain I felt when I went down to the D dungeon and saw that you weren't among the survivors. It was the worst thing I could have felt. I don't want you to expose yourself to that danger again, and not anymore. Rihanna was probably the most afraid of all of what might happen to him. Although no one saw her, she was the one who cried the most for his death. Rihanna was a very sentimental person, even though she appeared calm on the outside. I don't want to lose you again. I feel like if something happens to you this time, I'll never see you again, she whispered, lowering her gaze. Hermid said it would be very bad for you if you were to expose yourself to that kind of thing when you haven't recovered yet. I'm not strong enough like knees to bear seeing you die if something happens to you down there, and Rihanna. But before the girl could finish speaking, Belle interrupted her, approaching her and making her look up and see the albino's eyes. I'm sorry, Belle whispered, looking at her with a guilty expression. I'm sorry I was such a weakling back then. And I didn't mean that. You know I'm right, he said, looking down. All this time I was too weak, so weak that I couldn't save anyone even once, and to the point of dying in battle without being able to accomplish anything. I was completely useless. That's not true. It is. I promised never to hurt any of you, and it was the first thing I did. And no, it wasn't your fault. I failed many times in my time here in Orario. You have no idea how frustrating all of that is, and seeing you cry has made me realize how naive I was all this time. As he said those words, Belle brought his hand to Rihanna's cheek and wiped away one of her tears. But not anymore. I'm not the same as back then. I'm not that weak boy who failed every time he wanted to save someone. Belle wanted to die in that war. He would rather die 1,000 times than be prone to becoming a psychopath like his uncle. But another part of him was desperately calling for him to live and return to all those girls he loved so much, to give his all and come back to them. I didn't want it to end that way. Rihanna. Belle slowly and gently took one of the girl's hands. You probably think it's an empty promise or one I can't keep, but I promise you everything will be alright. I'll come back to you no matter what. We'll get back from that place together. Belle. So don't cry anymore. One way or another, I'll find a way for us to get back to Knossos together and relive those moments when we cooked together. We promised, he whispered, looking intently into the girl's eyes. If there's one thing I hate, it's seeing you cry because of me, so I'll do everything I can to make sure those eyes never shed tears again, I promise. And with those words, Belle wrapped his arms around Rihanna and gave her a hug. The girl blushed slightly, feeling her heart beat rapidly after hearing those words. The warmth and happiness she felt in her heart were great after hearing that. It had made her feel very special. Although she hadn't made as much progress as Kaguya, Knees, RD, her allies, she felt very happy with the small things she had achieved with Belle. She felt that their relationship was becoming more and more special. Belle. And? Womanizer? Huh? Belle pulled away slightly from the hug, looking at Rihanna, who was looking at him, slightly blushing. I've seen how you treat the others with the same affection, Kaguya, Knees or RD, you're a womanizer. BANOI. Belle didn't know why, but he began to feel nervous again after a long time since he had returned from the dead. For the first time, I wasn't acting out a reaction. Hahaha. But Rihanna's soft laughter snapped him out of it and he felt her hug him again, letting her face fall onto his chest. Now that Belle had grown a lot taller, most girls only came up to his shoulder or chest. But I don't mind, as long as you show me those affections too, I'll be happy, he whispered, closing his eyes and feeling the albino's warmth. Although that doesn't change the fact that you're a womanizer. I'm just kidding, silly. Rihanna slowly pulled away from the hug and stood on her tiptoes to kiss him on the cheek. I'm actually the silly one for falling for the same guy my friends like, but I want to stay silly, she thought, looking into Belle's red eyes. Rihanna. Let's return from that war together, and when we return, I will strive to surpass them all and be the first. I hope you keep your promise to come back together, he whispered, letting his face fall back onto her chest. I'll never forgive you if you don't. I promise. Belle, still not understanding what had happened, wrapped his arms around Rihanna, hugged her again, and stroked her hair, a gesture that the girl liked very much. At least she wasn't crying anymore, and that calmed him down. He had just realized that he didn't like seeing Rihanna cry at all, or rather, not with anyone, but for some reason, seeing her cry made him feel much more guilty. She was a very sentimental girl. I love you, Rihanna thought, wishing the day would come when she could say those words directly and not just think them. Some time later. We are now in the headquarters hall where everyone was already gathered, except for Haraham and Ace who were still wandering around. They were all having their final meeting before leaving. Is Cranel-san going? Ryu asked, surprised to see the albino in the room in his battle attire with his sword at his waist. That was more than obvious, it was something we all suspected, Kagaya said, sitting on a sofa. The only one who didn't know was you and Rihanna, it's clear she's been crying. Shut up, a girl whispered, lowering her gaze in embarrassment. Do you agree with this? The elf asked, turning to look at Hera. Bel has already made his decision and I will respect it, I cannot oppose it, replied the goddess who, although she was very worried about her son going to that place, knew very well that it was something he wanted. So if he wants to be my partner, you'll accept his decision? Kagaya asked with an innocent smile. Those are completely different things, you stupid oriental woman. Oh, come on. Don't start, Noin pleaded, already tired of these arguments. Little Noin is right, Galatea said, taking a step forward. We're about to enter a war, so let's put aside the jokes and absurd arguments. Now she wants to act like a mature woman, some girls thought, watching their teacher. We know nothing about enemy territory, so it will be a war against us, but that doesn't mean we will surrender, Galatea said, looking at everyone. All we know is that Knossos is enormous. According to an Evilus member, the floors of that place reach all the way down to the lower levels of the dungeon, Reverius said, sitting on a sofa. It will be difficult to know where each Evilus leader is and not get lost in the process. There's nothing more dangerous than going into unknown territory, Salty whispered, adjusting her glasses. That's what a book I read a while ago said. Exactly, this war is practically in favor of those rats, Galatea said. And I highly doubt they invited us just like that without any plan. They already have a welcome prepared. And we have a better one for you. A bloodbath. It was the voice Bell heard in his mind, although outwardly he continued to appear calm. What I'm trying to say is that this will be hard for everyone. Many will probably die down there, but as your teacher I hope all of you come back alive, Galatea said, looking at each of her students. No matter how, at the end of all this, I want to see each of you standing in this room. I know it sounds very optimistic, but we have to have hope. I agree with you, Sensei. Ally said, motivated. We've worked really hard in our training. We have to win. For some reason, I have a feeling this will be much harder than the Dark Age, Nese whispered. Evilus has changed so much in such a short time. Their power has increased greatly, and it's all thanks to their leaders, Astrea added. It doesn't matter, Evilus has been harming the city for too long, it's time he fell once and for all, said Kagaya. Exactly, that's what I mean, said Galatea proudly. But I'm still not convinced that Bell should go, Mariu whispered, looking at the albino with concern. Don't worry, Mariu, Rihanna said with a slight smile. Everything will be alright, I'm sure of it. Despite still having her doubts, Rihanna decided to believe Bell's promise. I know you can handle this, Astrea said, looking at all her daughters. Please, return safely to headquarters. Astrea-sama. And with that said, everyone began to prepare themselves a little more before leaving. Bell. As Hera approached the albino, he raised his head, seeing his grandmother. Take care down there, please, the goddess whispered, giving the boy a hug. If anything happens to you and you don't come back to me, I'll come to heaven immediately to see you. Grandmother. But I know you'll make it. You're Bell, my son. You're a strong boy, she said, pulling away from the hug and looking at him with a slight smile. Just look at how much you've changed. You're tall, with a mature expression, and you're very strong. Who would have thought that little boy I raised with so much love would become such a handsome man? Grandma, don't start. I just want you to know how incredibly proud I am of you, despite everything, she said, kissing her forehead. Destroy them all and go back to your mother. I promise, I whispered, smiling slightly as I gave her one last hug. I'll come back to you. And when you get back, you and I will have a very serious talk about not falling in love with just any woman you meet along the way. Boy, Althea. As Galatea approached the silver-haired woman who was alone leaning against a wall. What do you want? Althea asked, watching all the girls chatting and noticing the nervousness in more than one of them. I would like to ask you a favor. Upon hearing those words, Althea turned to look at the purple-haired girl and listened attentively to what she would say. If it's stupid, I swear that. It's not, he said with a touch of amusement, seeing how Althea thought it was another joke. It's something serious. Things. Hey, if something happens to me down there and I can't get back, stay with Bell, don't abandon him like last time, please. I want you to take on that role you always refused to accept. I'm sure he'll be very happy to live with a blood relative. Don't be an idiot, Belle loves you too much for me to just take on that role out of nowhere. I'm not saying this as if I'm going to abandon him, I'm only saying it in case things get complicated down there, she whispered, lowering her gaze. Don't leave him alone. If he's suffering, stay by his side. If he's depressed, offer him words of encouragement. If he's crying, give him a hug with all the love in the world, don't be afraid to be with him. Gladia. But since I'm not going to die, I'll be Belle's favorite woman and you'll be a background extra. Hahaha. You damn idiot, Althea whispered, her eye twitching as if she wanted to hit her. Go to hell. Oh, come on, don't get angry. I was serious, but I wanted to end the conversation with a little joke, she said, patting him lightly on the back. If you keep getting angry, you'll get even older than you already are. You want to die before entering Knossos, don't you? Hahaha. From afar, Belle watched them argue while still hugging Hera. Then she turned her gaze to her friends. Noin and Astrea were chatting on a sofa, a little nervous about what might happen. Mariu and Rihanna were also chatting. It seemed that Rihanna was giving them words of encouragement to calm them down. Lyra, with an excited smile, showed Ryu and Celti a small artifact she carried in her backpack. The latter hid behind Ryu in fear. Nese was sitting quietly on the sofa adjusting her gloves until her eyes met his, where the she-wolf smiled slightly, showing affection in that look. Pagaya was talking with allies about possible strategies they could create in any scenario down below. And finally, Astrea was chatting with Iska, who was excitedly showing her a dagger that Gladia had given her, and Astrea was congratulating her. For them. Belle would give his all in that war. He didn't care about getting his hands dirty with blood again if it meant they all returned alive to the surface. They were everything to him, as were his grandmother, aunt and teacher, and if any of them died, it was as if he died inside too. Many would die, but I would do everything possible to ensure they were not on that list. She didn't want to lose any more important people right before her eyes no more. I'll be waiting for you, Belsava whispered, petting the little cat. We'll finish this once and for all uncle, the albino thought with a darkened look. Two people who are the same but at the same time so different. A huge smile appeared on Sava's face, and a huge internal smile appeared in Belle's mind. Ha-ha-ha. Ha-ha-ha. And both laughs sounded, one mentally and one loudly in that empty room. The final war of Orario against Evilus had begun. End of chapter. Chapter 69. First problems. So this is Knossos. It reminds me of my old house. It gives off a smell of death. We find ourselves in one of the most secluded places on Daedalus Street, specifically on a street which was completely abandoned, with no people living in the dilapidated houses. Although at that moment that street was not deserted, since it was full of adventurers who were in front of a wall, or what used to be a wall, since it had opened wide as if it were a door, giving way to a completely dark corridor. The vast majority of those present were members of the Ganesha family, as it was currently the largest family, as was the Freya family, although there were few of them. There were also some healers from the Dian family willing to help. A few members of the Hephaestus family. And, of course, the Justice family. Can I drop my bomb in there and see what happens? Lyra asked Gladia. No, I want to kick some ass, so leave her for later, Gladia whispered, cracking her knuckles as she thought of Sava. You think the same, don't you, Althea? I just want to end all this trouble once and for all, the woman said, looking at the huge dark hallway and sensing that there was something strange about it, although she didn't know what it was. I wonder what awaits us beyond those corridors, Iska whispered to her friends, who were also observing the place. I don't know, but whatever it is, it won't be pretty, Noin said, unable to hide her nervousness. I have a feeling Evilus has more than one trap set. Don't even doubt it, Kagaya said with a serious expression. Evilus has always played dirty, and I highly doubt this will be the exception. I'd say it would be best if we stayed together, but it's likely that later on we'll have to separate, Ni said, adjusting his wrestling gloves on his hands. I'm afraid to separate, Celti whispered, feeling fear of what might happen down there. She was afraid that when all this was over, some member of her family would have died, or that she herself would fall in battle, no longer able to live with them. Don't worry, Celti. But one of her friends put her hand on her shoulder, which had a slight older sister smile. Everything will be alright, Celti, so don't worry, Rihanna said, beginning to stroke the elf's hair. So calm down, little elf. Don't treat me like a child, Celti pleaded, embarrassed that they were stroking her hair, although she didn't dislike the gesture. It was pleasant and reassuring. Meanwhile, Belle was in the back watching her friends chat, or so it seemed until she felt someone gently touch her shoulder. Hey, Ally said with a slight smile, positioning herself beside him. Nervous? To be honest, no, the albino whispered his answer, turning to look at the redeed. I'm so jealous. I wish I could be calm too, but I'm so nervous, she laughed, looking at all the adventurers gathered on the street. it terrifies me to think that more than half the group is likely to die. I wish we could all come back alive, but that only happens in fairy tales. All of you are going to come back alive, Belle whispered, looking down. How are you so sure? I asked, smiling slightly. I don't know, she said, watching all the girls chatting amongst themselves to hide their nervousness. I just know. Haha, are you some kind of fortune teller now? I asked with a touch of amusement. But you're right, the great allies won't let anyone fall in this battle. I promise. I know it's not like that, I whispered, turning to look at the Redeed's lively face. Take care down there, eh? 2. Hole. The Redeed's eyes lost their sparkle when she heard him mistake her name again. It was too good to be true, she whispered, a depressed aura surrounding her. But it doesn't matter. When we get back, I'll etch my name into your brain. You'll never forget it. L. But then a girl appeared in the place hugging the albino. It was RD. We must strive to bring peace to Orario, she said with a beautiful smile, stepping back slightly. Are you going to participate? He asked curiously. Obviously. I didn't want to go, but Shakti begged me to go, since my presence would be vital to the war, so I had to accept he. Liar, thought the older Varma a little ways away, knowing that she was only saying that to show off in front of Belle. So we have to fight together and return everything to how it was before, he whispered, looking into the albino's eyes. To those pleasant times. Burn. Very well, we understand. But a jealous ally stepped between them, a little angry because Belle remembered the name of the younger Varma and not hers. Oh, allies. I hadn't seen you, she said innocently. This isn't a game, RD. We have to take this war seriously, so don't get too close to Belle like that, you're distracting him from his meditation, she said, trying to hide her jealousy. We have to behave like mature adults. You're right. Mature people, Ryu whispered, a little anime-style sweat drop forming on his forehead as he watched the two of them chatting. Huh. However, she noticed that Belle was watching her, so with a slight smile, she approached him to chat a little before leaving. We must do our best, Cranel-san, for the sake of Orario, he said, now standing before him. Please take care of yourself down there and don't do anything reckless. You're still recovering honestly, I wouldn't want you to go, but it's your decision, so there's nothing I can do. Cranel-san. She said, surprised to see that the albino kept staring at her. Ryu-san. Yeah? There's a big question I've had these past few days, but I haven't had the chance to ask you about it and I'd like you to clarify it for me. Sure, what's up? When Belle asked that question, he moved a little closer to Ryu than usual, making her a little nervous. I don't know if it's because of my schizophrenia or my memory loss, but I remembered your hair being long, not short, she whispered, tilting her head slightly in confusion. Upon hearing those words, Ryu made a face that said, are you serious? Are you only realizing this now? No, I realized it long before, but I didn't have the opportunity to ask you. Well yes, it was long, but I cut it, she whispered her answer, while touching a lock of her hair. Because it would get in my way when fighting and that's all. As she said those words, Ryu looked away, a little nervous. I wasn't going to tell her that when he died it caused her so much sadness and anger that she simply decided to cut her hair because she was planning to attack some of Evilus's lairs as revenge, but a conversation with Astrea calmed her down. Really? That's a shame, I remember you looked good with long hair, although you also look pretty with short hair. As he said those words, Belle lightly stroked the elf's hair, leaving her perplexed. Take care down there, Ryu-san. Ryu-san. Belle was confused when he saw the elf's face turn bright red as she quickly lowered her gaze. Is something bad happening, Ryu-san? And nothing is happening, the elf stammered, very embarrassed. Meanwhile, in the distance, a high elf, Hedin, watched this interaction with disappointment as this human didn't know what he was getting himself into. Miss Riveria. The tall elf, who was a little apart from the rest, was called by a certain cat from her old family who approached her with a slight smile. Aki, it's good to see you, Riveria greeted, smiling as well. I see you're going to participate in this war too. Yes, I want to do something, even if it's just a small thing, to avenge the death of everyone of Raul, she whispered, clenching her fists angrily. I know exactly how you feel, because I feel the same way, she said, raising her eyes to the sky. Fighting for their memory is our duty. Miss Riveria. Yeah? Were we a weak family? Upon hearing that question, the elf turned to look curiously at the cat. Why do you say that? Because the family was eliminated. It all happened so fast, it felt like we were just in Evilus's palm waiting to be crushed. I think it was the second time I've felt so weak, she whispered, lowering her gaze as she remembered how she was crushed by Fulax. No, we were strong, Riveria replied, looking at all his comrades from that war. But our opponent was a psychopath who didn't care about failing his plan. There's no worse enemy than one who isn't afraid to risk everything without caring about anything. They're so unpredictable that it worked against us. We never imagined that Evilus would personally arrive at headquarters to invade it, they were simply one step ahead of us. But there's nothing we can do now, our family is gone, so all we can do is keep going for them, so let's win this war. Yes, Miss Riveria. After that, both stood watching all their companions, some of whom were preparing to enter Knossos. You know, Finn, Gareth and I have discussed many times that in the not-too-distant future, you would be the vice-captain of the family, Riveria began, recalling past events. Really? I asked in surprise. Of course, Finn held you and Raul in high regard. He was sure that you two would be the future captains of the family. He believed in you. You have the attitude of a good leader, Aki, and I know you'll be a great help. I hope to see you at the end of this war. Me too, Miss Riveria, me too. And thank you. What the hell are we waiting for to go in? The speech. The one who gave stupid speeches was the brave one. I want to fight. These were the words of the Gulliver brothers, bored and angry at never having entered Knossos. Beside them were Otter and Hedin, who remained calm, waiting for the moment to enter. The speech. I remember Mr. Finn always giving one before anything important. It should be a motivational speech for everyone. Some members of the Ganesha family whispered. Did someone say speech? But the lively Galatea heard the complaints of the Gulliver brothers and the comments of the Ganesha family members, so she quickly went to a medium-sized house and stood on the roof, capturing the attention of the others. I'm not good at speeches, so I'll just say a few words before going in. They didn't know if it was because they had already lived with her, but the girls of the Astrea family already suspected what the purple-haired girl would say with that smile she always wore. Don't die so quickly down there, Galatea said, making some nervous and others serious, taking her words as a reason to survive to the end in that war. If you're afraid to go, you still have time to retreat. But nobody said anything, even though some were afraid they would not back down. Perfect, then let's go. The war had already begun. Some nervous and others determined, they took up their weapons and began to enter Knossos, not knowing what awaited them. The Gulliver brothers left complaining and wanting to fight. Hedin and Otter walked with serious expressions, their objectives clear and above all, never to be overconfident, as their goddess had ordered. After them came the members of the Ganesha family, led by Shakti, and with her was RD, who had replaced her lively smile with a serious one, knowing that they were all entering the very depths of hell. The members of the Dayan family, despite the agreement to wait for them at the entrance, some decided to go to heal the wounded, as is the case of Ermid who, despite her god's insistence not to go, still entered. And finally, he walked slowly towards the Astrea family, watching as all his companions entered that dark corridor. Are you ready, Belle? Galatea asked, turning to look at her student. But he did not respond, he just kept walking with an emotionless expression. Apparently so, he whispered, turning his gaze back to the road. Huh? But before entering, he saw Althea suddenly stop at the entrance with a serious expression. This Althea? Rihanna asked, stopping along with the rest of them. Is something wrong? Mariu asked. What are you waiting for, Althea? The others are already leaving, Galatea asked, crossing her arms. I won't be able to go, the woman whispered. Hey? The moment she said those words, everyone turned to look at her, confused. What? Why? Salty asked. Oh come on, are you going to tell me you were scared? Galatea asked playfully. If she leaves, I'll leave too to keep her company, Nguyen thought. It's not that I don't want to, I can't, she whispered again, a slight anger evident in her eyes. Why? Allies asked, puzzled. Althea did not answer, she simply raised her arm and slowly moved it towards the entrance to Knossos under the watchful eyes of everyone. And when her hand was close to passing through the entrance, a barrier prevented it, launching a strong electric shock that forced her to quickly move her hand away, seeing how part of her glove was burned, as well as a little of her fingers. TSK, Althea clicked her tongue angrily. Those damned bastards put up a barrier just for me to keep me from crossing. What? Galatea said in surprise, reaching her arm through the entrance and seeing that the strange barrier didn't appear with her. Damn it. You damned wretched Sava. The others were shocked when they saw that. The barrier? Is that possible? Mariu asked nervously. It's possible, I've heard of magic that creates barriers and all that, supposedly they're much more powerful if directed at a single person. I wouldn't be surprised if Evilus had someone with magic like that. Damn wretches. The cowards knew the danger Althea represented, so they wanted to leave her out of this, Galatea said furiously. Very cunning. But you're Althea. You can cross without any problems, right? Salty asked nervously. Yes, but half my body would be destroyed. This kind of magic is very powerful, especially if it belongs to a first-class magic user, the woman replied, sounding a little annoyed. The only way to stop it would be by eliminating the owner of this magic. What? We don't even know who he is, Nee said, worried. That's easy, it's Lilith, Galatea said, frowning. She's the only one I know who has annoying spells, like the one that sends you to random places. I wouldn't be surprised if she had one like that. Then we have to eliminate the elf if we want her to cross, Lyra whispered. We haven't even started and we already have a problem. This is very annoying. They'll have to keep going without me tsk, Althea said, trying to contain the anger she felt inside at not being able to go into battle. This sucks, Galatea said angrily when she saw that she wouldn't be going. Althea was a key player in this war and now she was out of it all. Things had gotten complicated. So what do we do now? Celti asked nervously. Isn't it obvious? Find that elf and destroy her so this magic disappears, said the purple-haired girl, cracking her knuckles. What a great idea. Now all that's left is to find it among the many floors in this stupid place, Kagaya said sarcastically, making Galatea glare at her. Don't start, Noin pleaded wearily. Just go, Althea whispered, looking at her burned fingers. You're just wasting your time here while everyone else is leaving. But you're not involved in this, Rihanna whispered nervously. What? Do you want me to hold your hands? Althea asked, looking at them all. You didn't train all this time for nothing. Aren't you the family of justice? The girls fell silent upon hearing those words. As I said, I didn't train a bunch of cowardly scaredy cats, so I won't tolerate any of you backing down. It's your city, so protect it at all costs. Galatea smiled slightly upon hearing what the woman said. You've really changed, Althea. You're nothing like that arrogant woman from the past, she thought with amusement. By being out of this doesn't mean the war is lost, you have grown strong, don't doubt it. The girls opened their eyes in surprise upon hearing those words. That was the first time Althea had praised them since they met her. I couldn't help it, but that made them happy. Yes, Miss Althea. And more determined than before, the girls also entered Knossos to catch up with the rest of the group. We will soon eliminate this annoying barrier, just wait, Galatea said, looking at the silver-haired woman. Hey. That. Don't die, idiot. Why? Would you feel sad? The purple-haired girl asked mockingly. Be quiet. Ahaha, don't worry, I'll be back. And with those words Galatea also turned around to enter Knossos, leaving only herself and Belle, who was watching her. Once the barrier is broken, I will come with you, Althea said, looking at her nephew. I almost prefer you don't go, Belle whispered, remembering that conversation he had with her in that church. Althea's life would be shortened the more power she used. Her illness was troublesome. Take care down there, Belle, and think very carefully about what you're going to do. I'll have it, Aunt Althea. And with those words, Belle also turned around and entered Knossos, leaving Althea alone at the entrance, watching him walk further and further away until she could no longer see him. According to what she had heard from the girls, Belle's old personality was lively, friendly, and smiling, very different from how she was now. He would have liked to know that side of him. So, with her arms crossed, Althea waited patiently for that barrier to break so that she could participate too. For some reason she had a bad feeling and it was bothering her. They'd better survive. First floor of Knossos. The echoes of footsteps were the only thing that could be heard in that enormous apartment with long hallways. The tension was palpable throughout the atmosphere, evident in every person's face. They were inside the lair of Evilus, the same organization that had eliminated great adventurers. The fear they felt was more than justified. Although not all, some were serene, as was the case with the Freya family, who had serious expressions. Or some experienced members of the Ganesha family, such as Shakti. And obviously Galatea and Belle, the latter because he couldn't show emotions, or at least it was very difficult for him, although if he could show them then fear would be the last emotion he would show. This is too quiet to be Evilus's main lair, Kagaya whispered without breaking stride. I expected death and destruction the moment we entered, but I was wrong, Lyra said, looking in all directions. Actually, I was expecting something like this, Galatea said calmly. They're not going to start a fight like idiots when we're all gathered in one place. They did it with the Loki family, Rihanna whispered, glancing sideways at Aki and Reveria, who were ahead of the group. Those were two different situations. Now we are in their territory, so there is no reason to make a stupid attack this time. They will think things through more before acting. That makes sense, Nise commented. It makes me nervous to know what they have planned. I'm sure they already have everything ready to start. Silence once again fell upon the enormous group, who looked in all directions, alert to what might happen. All they had been doing was walking down that straight corridor without encountering anything, not even a door or passageways. And so it remained for a few minutes without anything happening. Until. Don't be nervous, Celti thought, gripping her new magic staff tightly, since the old one had been destroyed by Gassi. You're much stronger now thanks to Miss Althea. Believe in yourself. Despite saying that, she felt scared, but she would still fight. I just have to be with everyone and Celti. Eliza's scream alerted the whole group, who suddenly stopped to see what was happening. As Celti walked along peacefully, the ground beneath her opened up and she began to slowly fall. And allies, worried, ran towards her to try to take her hand, but she couldn't get there in time, the elf falling into that hole which closed instantly under the surprised gaze of everyone. Lilith's magic, Galatea whispered, frowning angrily. What happened? I don't know. The earth swallowed her up. These were the whispers heard from members of the Ganesha family, who did not know what had happened. That magic, Bell thought, his gaze darkening as he watched the elf disappear. See Celti, Rihanna whispered, worried about her friend. Calm down, it's alright or so I hope, Galatea said, looking around as the other adventurers were, much more alert than before, since they didn't know what had happened. Evilus has already begun to move his pieces. Take them all away, Lilith. Yes, Sava. They are. The few adventurers screamed as the earth opened up and swallowed them without giving anyone a chance to react. What's going on? No, I don't. Shit. The enemy is attacking. Nerves began to show in many adventurers as more and more adventurers were swallowed by the earth, taking out their weapons ready to face anything. There's nothing we can do, Galatea whispered, watching the number of adventurers dwindle more and more. Their goal was to separate us from the start. What do we do? Mariu's question was cut short the moment the earth beneath her opened up, sending her plummeting into the void. Nothing, replied the purple-haired woman. I don't know Lilith's magic very well, but I do know that she doesn't need to be present to use it. If you hear an explosion and Naso shakes, it's me. Lyra shouted as she saw the earth beneath her open up. Goodbye. Wait, are we really going to separate? Nguyen asked nervously, watching as more classmates disappeared. Well, it seems we have no other option, just ask not to appear alone in a dangerous apartment. And you're coming with me, Rihanna. Nguyen shouted, grabbing the girl's hand. What? Hey, wait. And so another hole opened up beneath Nguyen, and since he was holding Rihanna's hand, it pulled her down into the void as well. Better that way, I won't have to deal with any nuisances, Hedon whispered, adjusting his glasses. I don't care what stupid game they're planning, they'll pay for making Freya-sama cry over Alan's death. Don't get cocky, Hedon, Otter said seriously. I already know that. And at that moment the earth beneath them opened up, falling into the void just like the Gulliver brothers. Lilith's magic was curious. She could take people through those magic holes to other places. If she touched a person and marked them with her magic, she could bring them even if they were miles away, as happened with Gassi. She can also travel to a place herself, but to appear in a specific location, she has to be close to her target, which is why she appeared in Loki's room, although she first had to go through many rooms, since she didn't know which one she was in. The only place where she had total control was in Naso's, her territory, although when she occupied it with a large number of people, the place where they were going to fall was completely random. Not even she knew where they were going to end up. It was a powerful and at the same time annoying magic. Good luck, Aki, Riveria whispered, looking at the cat. You too, Miss Riveria. And at that moment they both disappeared. They weren't going to do anything to prevent it. They were in enemy territory and knew very well that something like this was going to happen, especially for those who already knew the skills and magic of the evilest leaders. Give me strength, Alan, thought Denev, clutching the spear that once belonged to the cat. Shaktini, I'm not a child, RD whispered, feeling her sister take her hand. You're not going to leave me, Shakti said, lightly squeezing her younger sister's hand. Thus one by one they fell and disappeared into the darkness, with Belle and Galatea remaining as the last. The albino, with his gaze lowered and dull eyes, turned to look at his teacher, who was also looking at him. Galatea had noticed how Belle's attitude had been becoming increasingly subdued as the day of the war drew closer. And today that personality was clearly noticeable. Belle, Galatea whispered, looking into the eyes of her beloved pupil. I'm going to kill Sava. And with that whisper from the albino, he too disappeared into the darkness, leaving only Galatea, whose ground also opened up beneath her. Not if I can stop it, the purple-haired woman thought, gripping her sword. That wretch is mine if you find out everything I have to stop him. Galatea still didn't know that Althea had told Belle the whole truth. Okay, let's get started. And Galatea also disappeared, leaving the first floor of Naso's completely empty. The curtain on the final act had been raised. The final war of Orario against Evilus had begun. The war that would be the culmination of many things. And that Orario would remember for many centuries. The bloody and destructive war. It has begun. Haha, if you can, send lots of them to where I am, I want to have some fun. 7th floor of Nasos. Ouch. At a height of 2 meters, a hole opened up and a certain Redeed fell in, sitting on the ground and complaining a little about the impact. It was allies. Ugh, that makes me dizzy, whispered the Redeed, feeling lightheaded after being swallowed by the earth. It was an unpleasant feeling, to be honest. Upon hearing a familiar voice, allies looked up and saw that it was Kagaya, who had her katana in her hand. And not only her. Also present were Ryu, Knees, Aki, 2 of the 4 Gulliver brothers, and 7 members of the Ganesha family. "Where are the other idiots?" asked Brother Gulliver, named Burling, who was carrying an axe. "Obviously we were separated," whispered the older brother, whose name was Alfred, who was carrying a spear. While they were talking, the members of the Ganesha family carefully observed and analyzed the place, as did the family of Justice. "At least we're together," Knees whispered, her gaze sharp. "What worries me is knowing where the others are," Ryu said, feeling concerned for his companions. "It'll sound bad, but we're in enemy territory, so look out for yourself," Kagaya said, gripping her katana. "We don't even know what stupid floor we're on TSK, this is annoying. The first thing we need to do is explore a bit and see if there are any enemies nearby," Ally said. "We don't know how many Evilus members there are." "The members of Evilus are the least of our concerns," Aki said seriously, capturing everyone's attention. "What do you mean?" asked a confused member of the Ganesha family. "On that mission they had monsters fused with spirits, and they were strong despite saying they were failed experiments," the cat explained. "You're right, it wouldn't be surprising if there were a lot of those things here in Knossos," Knees said, remembering that hell. "They're much more dangerous." "Ah, they're just talking nonsense," Burling said, annoyed. "Let's just advance and kill every enemy we come across, it's that simple." "I forgot that the members of the Freya family lack brains," said Kagaya, looking at the hobbit with disdain. "You wretch." Burling was about to attack Kagaya, but his older brother Alfred stopped him. "So what do you propose, Easterner?" the hobbit asked seriously. "Go up those stairs." As she said those words, Kagaya pointed to some stairs that were a few meters away from the group. "I don't know about you guys, but this floor is too quiet for there to be any fused monsters, and the Evilus idiots aren't exactly known for being quiet when they attack, so it would be best to go up and see if there's anything interesting up there," the Asian woman suggested, looking at the rest of the group. "I think the best thing would be to explore this floor. It's too big to say there are no enemies," said the wolf Knees. "I agree with you," Aki whispered. We have differing opinions," Ally said, tapping her chin with a finger. "What should we do?" "Do what you want, we'll go our own way," said Alfred, slinging his spear over his shoulder and turning to leave. "You keep arguing and wasting time, idiots," Burling insulted, looking at them with contempt. "Hey, we have to go as a team." "Leave them alone, Lion," Kagaya interrupted the elf indifferently. "Let them do what they want. We're enough for them." "It was always complicated to get along with the Freya family," Allies whispered with a nervous smile. "Huh?" But before the Gulliver brothers left the place, something stopped them and caught their attention, just like everyone else's. Another hole had opened up a few meters high, a sign that another person would fall where they were. "More? I thought only we would fall here," said a boy from the Ganesha family, confused. "I hope it's someone strong who can help us in the fights," another whispered, looking at that hole high above. Meanwhile, the girls and the Gulliver brothers watched this seriously, having a bad feeling about it. And they weren't wrong. Someone fell into the hole, which closed instantly. The moment his feet touched the ground, all the concrete shattered, causing a slight tremor in the surrounding area. He had a huge body, much bigger than Otter's. The veins in his muscles were prominent all over his body. One of his arms was a different color, as if someone had given him a different one. Both sides of his mouth were scarred. He was missing one of his eyes. And he carried a huge axe with a wide smile, revealing his single eye which had small veins all around it. Everyone recognized him instantly. Mainly 2 girls whose eyes sharpened with pure hatred, remembering a certain hell they lived through. He was Vulax. It was the whisper that came from Aki and Knees as they looked at that leader of Evilus who had caused them so much pain in the past. "Leave Aki alone." The cat gripped her sword tightly, remembering how that wretch killed her best friend. "I love you, Knees." And the she-wolf, even though Belle was alive, could never forget how that man murdered Belle in front of her eyes that day, that enormous pain she felt. "He's the one who defeated Alan," Alfred whispered seriously. "This couldn't be better," Burling whispered, glaring at the enormous man. Meanwhile, the rest had surprised expressions upon seeing who had appeared. "Knees," Kagaya whispered as her gaze darkened. This was the one who killed Belle, right?" he asked, gripping his katana tightly. "Yeah. Perfect," she whispered, ready to fight with everything she had. "Vulax level 6 with a strength bordering on level 7, Allies thought, looking at her enemy who had a huge smile on his face. "Looks like we've got ourselves into a real mess." Meanwhile, Ryu just gripped his wooden sword, trying to contain his anger. Aki, Knees, Allies, Kagaya, Ryu, Alfred, Burling and 7 members of the Ganesha family. 14 adventurers against a single opponent whose power was clearly much greater than in the past, just by looking at him. Hahaha. The first group already had its opponent. 14th floor of Knossos. From the heights, an albino landed on his feet on that lonely floor, which had enormous pillars all around. His gaze remained as dull as at the beginning, only this time there was a certain hostility in those red eyes. "Am I alone?" he thought when he saw that there was no one in front of him. Belle. Although his question was quickly answered when he heard a voice behind him. When he turned around he saw that it was Mariu, who had a smile of relief upon seeing him. "I'm glad you're here too," said the girl, approaching the albino. "Mariu. When I fell here alone I was a little scared, but when you appeared here I felt safer," she said, letting out a sigh. Belle was also relieved to have shown up there because if he hadn't, Mariu would have been alone on that floor and in danger. It wasn't that she thought the girl was weak. She too had been training in hand-to-hand combat with everyone, but compared to the others, she was the weakest, and with the enemies they were about to face, death would be certain for her. The girl's strength was her healing magic, not fighting. "It seems like it's just the two of us here," Mariu whispered, looking around the apartment and noticing that there were no one else there but them. Or they weren't alone. They are. The ground a few meters away from them broke and out came a huge red-eyed centipede-like monster straight to attack them both. But the moment he intended to attack, Belle tore him in two in the blink of an eye, turning him to dust. Well, we're not so alone," Mariu whispered, surprised by the albino's speed and also nervous to see that there were monsters under the ground. "Mariu, don't leave my side," said Belle, looking at the girl with a gentle gaze. "Why yes, I'll be with you to heal any wounds you may have and I can fight too, so I'll help," the determined girl promised. "If things get complicated, then back off, I don't want anything bad to happen to you." "I understood." After that, Belle turned his gaze to the rest of the floor, seeing that besides the two of them, there was no one else and there were probably monsters on the floor. "Let's keep moving forward and look for a downhill or uphill slope," Belle said, starting to walk beside Mariu. He wasn't crazy enough to go a meter ahead of her. They were in Evilus's lair, so anything could happen in less than a second. He promised it himself. He wouldn't allow anything bad to happen to her. "He's so different from when I first met him," the girl thought, watching Belle walk. "Thank you very much, Mariu-san." He was almost nothing like the Belle of the past. He was now so serious and had an intimidating aura about him. Although only to her enemies, since she felt safe. "I promised you and I'm going to keep my promise, I'm going to heal even your worst wound," she thought, determined to help Belle in any way she could. Mariu and Belle on the 14th floor did not see any enemy other than a monster. They would continue exploring to find a companion or defeat an enemy. On some floor of Knossos. Trembling with fear and hidden behind a pillar, Astrea covered his mouth, avoiding making any small noise. Terror was evident in her eyes, and her trembling body heard the sound of bones being chewed, as well as the sound of meat. Slowly and still afraid, she peeked a little through that pillar, seeing in horror 3 bodies of members of the Ganesha family or what was left of them. And standing there chewing a monster. It was almost 3 meters tall, had 4 arms with enormous claws as well as on its feet, had huge bat wings on its back and enormous horns. And the most terrifying thing. His face. He had a face like a human being, except that he had enormous teeth sticking out of his mouth. He looked like a demon from the very depths of hell. Astrea didn't even know what happened. When he fell there, that monster was already eating them, feeling the enormous pressure it was releasing. Fortunately, he was so focused on his food that he didn't notice her there, giving her time to hide. That thing can't be a dungeon monster, Astrea thought, having never seen anything like it. Its mere presence makes me tremble. Food, more. The dwarf's body and blood froze as she heard that thing speaking in a deep voice that sent chills down her spine. That monster had spoken. "You." Astrea quickly hid again, her face completely pale, as she saw that thing turn to look where she was. "And no, please no," she thought, small tears welling in her eyes as she listened to the footsteps of that thing approaching. And no. Astrea felt death breathing down his neck as that thing drew closer. Not even half an hour had passed since it all began, and his death was already near. Hee. And letting out a slight mocking laugh, the monster raised 2 of its forearms to destroy that pillar. Astrea closed his eyes, awaiting his fate. And when the blow was about to connect with the pillar. "Wouldn't Miss Lilith send adventurers to this floor to entertain us? You know it's random, we just have to search." The voices of 2 Evilus members could be heard in the distance, thanks to the echo of that place, causing that thing to stop its blow. Astrea, still frightened, felt a gust of wind hit the place, making her close her eyes. And when I opened them again, I no longer felt that overwhelming presence peeking out a little, seeing that thing was gone. And heart-wrenching screams were heard in the distance. Astrea didn't think twice and started running as fast as his level allowed in the opposite direction from where that scream came from. She had been given a second chance and she wasn't going to waste it. "I have to get away from that thing," she thought frantically, without stopping her run. and warn the others about this. Hahaha. And the enormous laughter in the distance made her skin crawl, not wanting to find out who was laughing. The beast that had never been seen before had appeared on the battlefield. Althea just stood with her arms crossed, watching the entrance to Knossos. Waiting for that barrier to disappear so I could go in there too. Adventurers who entered Knossos. 72. Living adventurers. 69. End of chapter. Chapter 70. Complications. 12th floor of Knossos. Because. It was the whisper that escaped Nguyen as he walked alongside Rihanna, who let out a tired sigh. And ahead of them walked a smiling Lyra. At least I'll have an audience when I activate Fatman, Lyra said excitedly, turning to look at her two friends. Art is an explosion. Why did we have to get stuck with the craziest one of them all? Nguyen whispered again, knowing that if they didn't die from Evilus, they would die from her explosive friend. Come on, it's not so bad, Rihanna said, watching Riveria and Denev, a level 5 and a level 6, walking ahead of them. At least we're not alone. We have a good group. Well, at least I agree with you on that, said the human, turning to look behind her as she watched two men walking towards her and talking. They were two members of the Ganesha family, both of level 5. Their names were Ginta and Hikaku. Hey, do you think we'll end up dead? Ginta asked. I don't know, but if we die, it will be with beautiful women, Hikaku replied, looking at Riveria and Denev. Don't you think that's incredible? Idiot. At the front of the group. There are only 7 of us here, I hope nothing complicated comes up, said Denev, alert and looking all around, as was Riveria. This place is too quiet and we don't even know where in Knossos we are or how far we are from the others, Riveria whispered, gripping her staff. Some of them are probably already fighting Evilus. That's most likely, we'll soon run into some problems. The 12th floor of Knossos consisted of enormous corridors with many paths and crossroads all around, illuminated by torches. The corridors were wide. 4 orcs could easily walk together without getting in each other's way. Ariana, Nguyen called. What's happening? Do you think the others are okay? Obviously, if they appeared in a group there's nothing to worry about, she said, smiling slightly. And Bell? You're talking about Bell, he's the enemy he should be worried about. Despite what Rihanna said, the truth was that she was one of those who was most afraid of what might happen to the albino, even though she knew he was strong, much stronger than all of them, she still worried a lot about him. All he wanted was for the war to end and for them all to return to the surface together and be with his family and with him. Even though I brought Fatman, I also have 2 other destructive bombs with me, albeit on a smaller scale, Lyra whispered, carrying a backpack on her back. I just hope that, when I activate that thing, no one is around. I would have liked to appear here alone so I wouldn't have to worry. Stop. But suddenly Denev stopped walking, causing the others to stop as well. What's wrong, Denev? Ginta asked, puzzled. Someone is approaching at that intersection, the girl whispered, gripping her spear. There are several steps, Riveria said, managing to hear them. Meanwhile, Lyra grabbed 2 small bombs ready for use, and Rihanna and Nguyen prepared for combat. Silence lingered in that place, waiting for whatever it was to appear at that crossroads in the hallway. A calm return to them all when Tsubaki appeared at that crossroads leading 5 other people. Oh boys, the blacksmith greeted, smiling slightly. Oh, it's just you, Tsubaki, Denev whispered, lowering her guard slightly. For a moment I thought you were the enemy. It seems we're not the only group that ended up on this floor of Knossos, Riveria said, looking at the other 5 adventurers behind Tsubaki. They were 2 more members of the Hephaestus family, a healer from the Dayan family, and 2 more members of the Ganesha family. In total there were now 13 adventurers together. We've been walking for quite a while and haven't encountered any enemies, Tsubaki said, joining the others. What about you? Nothing yet. All this is unsettling. I feel like something bad is waiting for us, Denev said, feeling strangely uneasy. When things are too quiet in a place that's supposedly dangerous, well, it's anything but reassuring. It seems you've brought magic swords with you, Tsubaki, Riveria commented, noticing 2 swords on the girl's back. And not only her, the other 2 members of the Hephaestus family each brought one. Yes, I feel they can be of great use to us, probably as a distraction, rather than a final blow. While the 3 of them were chatting, the others were about 2 meters behind. Don't you think what you did was suicide? Nguyen asked, looking at a robed elf walking beside him. She was the family healer, Dayan. Nguyen, don't say that, Rihanna scolded her friend for her question. No, don't worry, I know very well that what I did was suicide, the elf said with a nervous smile. My name is Luna, by the way, how do you know me? Well, I've always seen you at the Dayan family hospital, and besides, the way you dress makes it more than obvious that you're a healer, Nguyen replied. I don't think it was the best idea to have come dressed like that to a war. You've come to heal, not to fight, Rihanna said. Even so, that doesn't answer my question. Why did you decide to enter Knossos as well? The vast majority of your family stayed at the entrance, Nguyen asked again. My duty as a healer is to be where the warriors are. What good is being up there if there's no one to heal? My job is to save lives, and that's what I'm going to do, Luna replied with determination. Even if I die down here, at least I want to save someone's life. That's my purpose. Wow, that's admirable, Rihanna whispered, surprised by the elf's words. She looked so young, about Celti's age. How old are you? I'll be 15 next month, she replied with a smile. Wrong, she's younger than Celti, Rihanna thought, even more surprised that someone that age was risking their life like that just to save even one person's life. That young elf loved her job as a healer. If we're talking about that, then what Mariu did is also suicide, since she's just a healer, Lyra joined the conversation. I told her many times not to come to this place, but she was already decided, Nguyen said, letting out a sigh, unable to help worrying about her friend. I just hope she's with someone who will protect her. Don't worry, I'm sure he'll be okay, I hope, Rihanna whispered. And so the group continued walking through those enormous corridors of Knossos, finding nothing but crossroads everywhere and coming across nothing different. Or that was until they reached a certain place. Huh? A door, Ginta whispered as he saw the enormous door in front of them. Finally something different, I felt like I was walking in circles, Hikaku complained. I wonder if this is the entrance to a new floor, Denov commented, approaching Reveria. But the moment they were 1 meter apart, they began to open, causing everyone to become alert and prepare their weapons. It could be a trap, Rihanna whispered. The moment I see something suspicious, Fatman is active. Shut up, Lyra, you're making me more nervous than I am with that thing, Nguyen pleaded, not taking her eyes off the enormous door. After a few seconds, it opened wide, causing more than one person to open their eyes in surprise at what they were seeing. That? Broer. What is this place? Reveria whispered, entering with the others and looking around in surprise. It was a huge room, too big, lit by many torches, and with closed doors on each side of that huge place, 3 of them, each with a number. 457, Ginta whispered, looking at the enormous numbers on each door. What could it mean? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not good, Hikaku said, looking around. Just look around you. Everyone saw the rest of that place, seeing how huge cells hung from the floor and ceiling, where there were different kinds of monsters. Cells with 2 minotaurs, one with 3 eyes and the other with 3 arms, looked tired as they sat in the cell with their gaze lowered. In another cell there was a large number of goblins, the vast majority of them black, screaming and scratching at the cell, wanting to get out. In another, there was an orc lying there without moving a single muscle. It looked as if he were already dead. And so in each of the cells there were mutated monsters, a sign that they had been experimenting on all of them, some dead, probably not resisting the experiments. I see, said Denov. This is the laboratory, where they create monsters fused with spirits. We are on one of the important floors of Knossos. Those people from Evilis are truly insane, Rihanna whispered, approaching a table laden with tools and pages. She picked one up and saw a drawing of a man, and beside it, what appeared to be a spirit. Abel. Those were the letters that were written above the drawing. Isn't that the name of that traitorous guy from the Ganesha family? Nguyen asked, puzzled. Are you talking about Cain? Ginta asked, approaching them and looking at the drawing. Wow, the drawing is almost identical to him. You're right, Hikaku agreed. Although now that I think about it, Ganesha-sama said that his real name was Abel, but they wanted him to be called Cain. I wonder why. And I don't know why he betrayed us either. Things were fine in the family, maybe he was never sociable with anyone, but he always helped the city, just like in the Dark Ages. I wonder what led him to betray us, Ginta added. It's not worth arguing about traitors, so let's leave that aside, Denov interrupted, frowning. Let's search this place and see if we can find anything of interest. Yes, Captain. I'm not your captain, you pair of idiots. So the group began to look around, finding curious files about all the experiments that had been carried out there. I know they're just monsters, but I can't help feeling a little sorry for them, Luna whispered, approaching a cage where a hellhound lay breathing heavily. It seemed to be in its last moments of life. Believe me, there are people in the world who commit the most atrocious acts, Reveria said, approaching the young elf. And for Evilis, that's perfectly normal. How can people like that exist? Who knows, perhaps their lifestyle led them down that path, Reveria replied, watching as the monster's breathing slowed until it stopped, ending its life. We mortals can be far more cruel than those we call monsters. I found some interesting notes. Shouted Tsubaki, who was looking around in the distance and found some notes, causing the rest to approach. Is this about another experiment? Rihanna asked curiously. It seems so, they're like the owner's diary, Tsubaki replied, reading what it said. Oh. What are you saying? Lyra asked, seeing the surprise in the woman's eyes. Well. Is that a bad thing? Denov asked, already knowing the answer. Read it yourselves and you'll see what it says. It seems like a lie, really, she whispered, handing the papers to Denov to read, and the others approached her. Let's see what this thing says. Text of the notes. A15. Walking around the 30th floor of the dungeon looking for a monster for my experiments, I came across something curious. I found a monster that can talk. It seems almost ridiculous that it does. I thought I was crazy, but no, that monster really had spoken. Obviously, I wasn't going to miss that opportunity, and I set out to capture it, but it quickly became defensive. It was strong, very strong, since Gassi was with me, and it was very difficult for her to catch it, but in the end, I have it with me. 17th. I have the talking monster in a cell, he keeps screaming and telling me to get him out of there, he seems very aggressive, I still can't believe that a monster is capable of talking, the other monsters in the other cells get very aggressive with him, it seems that they don't recognize him as a monster. Day 20th. After much thought, I decided to experiment with him and see what I can create. He's strong, so I can probably create a good weapon for the organization. Besides, Sava likes the idea, even though that thing keeps telling me it's going to kill me the moment I get out of that cell. How funny. Day 22. Things aren't going well. I've already used 6 lesser spirits and there's no change in that thing. It's getting stronger, but it endures everything, it doesn't even go mad or obey my orders. I think I'll have to use that spirit superior to the lesser ones I have. It's the only one there is, but it's worth it. Day 23. I fused it yesterday and nothing interesting happened, there was no change, so I thought it was a failed experiment. I thought about killing it today, but when I entered my laboratory and went to its cell it was gone, the cell was completely destroyed, that thing is walking freely in Knossos. Day 24. We have found a large number of corpses of our members throughout the floors of Knossos, including other fused monsters that were under my command. Each of those monsters was level 5 and they were massacred. I can't imagine how strong that thing is. Day 26. We found it, we decided to catch it between Fulax, Sava and me, things weren't looking good at that moment since it withstood Fulax's powerful blows, but we decided to guide it to an empty room where we could lock it up. While that was happening, that thing mocked us saying how weak we were, it seems that touched a nerve in Sava who, once he had it in the room, decided to launch an Azure Comet at maximum power. The magic hit him directly, disintegrating his entire body, leaving only his head on the ground. Sava had killed him with that destructive magic. I thought it was all over, but I was wrong. The 3 of us were perplexed to see how at great speed another body began to regenerate in that head. Well, that thing began to laugh. It was at that moment that we closed the doors of Orich Alchem before it regenerated in its entirety, the last thing we heard being its loud laughter, leaving it locked up there. Day 27. After much thought, I've decided to name that thing Chaos. I think the name suits it perfectly. I've created a monstrosity. Do I regret it? No, in fact, I'm proud of it. Day 30th. Orario will soon enter Knossos, and Sava has asked me to reopen the gates where Chaos is to free him and have him join the party. I was a little hesitant to do it since he will also kill our people, but in the end I agreed and opened the gate, and before it opened completely I escaped with my magic. I wasn't going to stay there to see it. But that thing lurking around in this war, things will be interesting. End of notes. Everyone in that place fell silent after reading those notes, looking at each other with perplexed expressions. Some felt scared, others nervous, and others curious. It seemed almost like a horror story. Talking monsters? Is that possible? Denov asked, raising an eyebrow. Are you serious? Is that the first thing you think of? Nguyen said nervously. What he's talking about is beside the point. There's something ridiculously powerful happening in Knossos. No, actually, the idea of a talking monster is curious. It's the first time I've heard of it, Reveria said, putting a hand to her chin. Hello? There's a super strong monster around here. Is anyone worried? Nguyen spoke again. What's so surprising about a talking monster? I know one, and her name is Kagaya, Lyra remarked. That was offensive, but you're right, Rihanna whispered. I wonder what his voice will sound like, said Ginta. It's definitely sharp, Hikaku added. Nguyen just let out a disappointed sigh when he saw that she was the only one who cared about it. I feel nervous too, Nguyen-san. A monster with that regeneration speed is worrying, said the young elf, looking at the human. Thanks Luna, you do understand. I think they're just lies, I highly doubt that a monster with that strength and regeneration exists, said Lyra, crossing her arms. Did you forget Delphine? Tsubaki asked, remembering that monster from the Dark Age. No, but if only her head remained, it wouldn't regenerate. Those notes are ridiculous, said Lyra, not believing it. It could be true or false, we don't know, Denov said, looking at the notes. I highly doubt Evilus would make up a story just to scare us, they're not like that, Reveria whispered. You're right, elf. The whole group jumped when they heard another voice in the room behind them, quickly turning around to see an elf standing a few meters away with a slight smile. It was Lilith. Uriveria whispered, looking at that woman with a certain anger. The story isn't a lie, I really believe that monster chaos. The rest quickly took up their weapons and glared sharply at the leader of Evilus. Oh yeah? Then where is that thing? Lyra asked, holding 2 bombs in her hands. I don't know, he could be on any floor, but not this one. Sava gave me the order to open the gates of that hell, and I did it. Now that demon is loose in these parts. It's likely that some of his friends have already died because of chaos. You better shut your mouth, pretty elf. Without thinking, Ginta launched himself at great speed towards Lilith, gripping his weapon, which was a huge halberd, threatening to cut the elf's neck. But you go on, there will only be 2 of those stupid leaders left. Lilith merely frowned upon hearing those words, leaping and dodging the halberd at the last moment. But what? Said Ginta, surprised. Are you an idiot? I'm level 5, I didn't get here through magic and inventions, I know how to fight too. You underestimate me because I'm an elf, she said, falling to the ground again. Although it seems a bit unfair that there are so many against me, it's very unbalanced. Don't talk about injustice after the way they wiped out my family, Riveria said, gripping her staff. Are you talking about it because I killed the goddess Loki? Yes, I admit it was a dirty trick, but it's just about securing victory, no matter the method. Something like honor in a battle is stupid, especially in a war, he said simply. That's what life has taught me, no matter how hard you try to do things right, they'll always turn out badly. I didn't come all the way down here just to listen to you complain, Denev said, taking a step forward and pointing her spear at her. I remember we went down to the dungeon back then to eliminate you, but it turned out Fulax was there. I think it's time to end that mission. I don't think that's going to be possible. There are 13 of us against you, the numbers aren't in your favor, you fool, Lyra said, raising an eyebrow. You've forgotten one thing, you're in Knossos, and not just on any floor in my territory, my place of experiments, I whispered with a slight smile. You're in the palm of my hand. Binta? Yeah. Binta and Hikaku quickly ran towards Lilith, each with their weapons. The latter also had a halberd like his companion. And Lyra launched her 2 bombs towards Lilith, hoping they would connect with her. As Sava says, let's start the party. The enormous door with the number 4 was opened, and at that moment at great speed, a winged monster flew out, standing in front of Lilith, receiving the bombs and halberd attacks, killing it and leaving the elf unharmed. This seems like a joke, Rihanna whispered. It all seems like nothing but a joke, said Noin, gripping his sword. From the enormous door with the number 4, now open, a large number of monsters began to emerge, including minotaurs, orcs, sirens, and more, all mutated and standing behind Lilith, as if waiting for an order. It seems the numbers are now in my favor, the elf whispered with a mocking smile. I think this is the first time I've seen a single person able to control so many monsters, Hikaku said in shock. It's probably because of his experiments, Ginta whispered. Well, nobody said this would be easy, said Tsubaki, preparing her magic sword, as did her 2 companions. If that's what Gate 4 is like, I don't even want to imagine Gate 5 or 7, Rihanna said. That's the least of it right now. Riveria still maintained that serious expression without taking his eyes off Lilith, who continued smiling. On the 12th floor, another battle had begun. Lilith and her creations against 13 adventurers. Shall we begin? Lilith asked. And with those words he snapped his fingers, making all the monsters roar loudly. I just hope everyone else is doing better than us, Noin whispered. 7th floor of Knossos. Agris Alvacinth. Allies let out a loud scream, her face covered in blood, bursting into flames as she shot off at tremendous speed towards Fulax. The battle on the 7th floor had also begun, and things were unbalanced, even though it was against only one person. But that person was Fulax. You're fast. Fulax shouted, throwing a powerful punch towards allies, who at the last second ducked, dodging the attack and launching a swift slash with her flaming sword. Although the attack only grazed the chest of the enormous man, who simply smiled with amusement. But he stopped smiling the moment he received a hard kick to the face. Stop smiling with that shitty face. Knees yelled, trying to control his anger. Do you remember me, you damn bastard? Little wolf, you should have taken advantage of the opportunity I gave you to live, the man whispered, throwing a powerful punch at Knees, who quickly covered herself with her arms, being thrown backward by the enormous force, but managing to withstand it. Opportunity? You gave me the opportunity to kill you in the cursed future, he said, his gaze sharp as a predator's, his tail bristling and his fangs growing. Even his hair seemed to have grown longer. You'll regret not killing me. Remember, you're not alone in this, Knees. Kagaya shouted, slashing swiftly with her sword, catching Fulax off guard and leaving him with a cut on his arm that slightly injured him. TSK, this bastard skin is tough. Damn girl. Fulax was about to attack Kagaya, but had to jump and dodge a spear that was aimed at his chest, seeing that it belonged to one of the hobbits who was looking at him seriously. Did this idiot-faced guy defeat Alan? Well, that imbecile definitely got cocky, Alfred whispered, swinging his spear. They're all annoying flies. When Fulax fell to the ground again, he had to dodge a sword that was going for his neck and block another wooden sword. They were Ryu and Aki. If you're alive it's thanks to your damned idiot leader, otherwise Bonafreya would have killed you, Aki said, glaring at him. By the way, what happened to your eye? Funny. And with great force, Fulax lowered his enormous axe and struck the ground, sending a large number of stones flying and forcing everyone to retreat to avoid being harmed. TSK, his strength is monstrous, Kagaya whispered, annoyed. And allies, watch out for that idiot's attacks. I know, but that blow caught me off guard, said the Redeed, wiping the blood that ran down her head, still burning with flames. And this guy's supposed to be level 6. We're all here and we're still having trouble, said a boy from the Ganesha family. By the way, my name is Ravi. Good information, but nobody asked you, Burling said, making the boy frown. If you don't come then I'll come to you. And at great speed Fulax appeared in front of Burling, who tried to protect himself with his axe, but his enemy was faster, grabbing him by the face and slamming him to the ground. Hee. Burling, you imbecile. Alfred shouted angrily, launching himself into an attack with his spear, ready to stab him. And at the same time Ravi attacked him with a large sword that he was carrying, aiming it directly at his neck. But they were both perplexed to see how he disappeared from the place. Although their surprise was short-lived, he appeared in front of them both, grabbing them by the head and slamming him between them. Come on, the kitten gave me more of a fight than all of you, Fulax mocked, though he stopped smiling again when he received a strong kick to the jaw. You'd better shut your mouth, you're strong at stealing other people's power, Nee said, ready to kick him again, but her enemy grabbed her foot and sent her flying into a wall, spitting blood. He's stronger and faster than back then. 2 members of the Ganesha family who were carrying bows with them began to shoot arrows at him, which did him almost no harm. Those things just give you an itch, he said irritably, ready to go and kill them, but a flaming sword stopped him. You're standing before the beautiful and powerful captain of the Astrea family, you shouldn't turn your back on her like that, he said, smiling slightly. Allies, you idiot, this is not the time to show off, Kagaya scolded, seeing her captain's attitude. I'm sorry, it's in my blood, and with those words, Allies dodged another punch that was going to her head. Fire. At that moment, 3 adventurers who were preparing their magic launched it towards Fulax, who only raised an eyebrow upon seeing it. Idiots, don't cast magic. Nees shouted when he saw what his companions had done. Didn't they tell you about that imbecile's abilities? Aki thought, observing everything. Meanwhile, Fulax just watched with a bored expression as the magic approached him. It's so weak it's not even worth absorbing, she whispered, raising her palm to receive the magic. And to the surprise of the 3, he stopped the magic with his bare palm, as if it were nothing, and threw it towards another member of the Ganesha family, who did not expect that. The magic, upon impacting him, caused an explosion, killing the guy instantly and leaving part of his body destroyed. You guys are boring. I'm going to get rid of the trash first, Fulax whispered, crouching down and picking up 3 stones the size of ping-pong balls. That'll do. After that he stood up and observed all his opponents who were scattered all over the place with their guard up. They didn't rush into a reckless attack. They had seen how ridiculously strong he was, so they had to think their moves through more carefully. But he wouldn't wait. You guys are idiots. And at monster speed Fulax threw the 3 stones at the 3 men who cast the spells, not giving them time to react. The stones pierced the heads of each of them and they fell lifeless to the ground. Without any effort, he had killed 4 in less than a minute. That was fun, she whispered. Unfortunate. Although one of them didn't think much before attacking. Lion. Allies shouted as she saw the enraged elf launch her attack without hesitation. That silly elf. Kagaya shouted, throwing herself in to help her as well. With great force Ryu lowered her wooden sword towards Fulax, who blocked it with his enormous axe, and then delivered a powerful kick to her stomach, causing the elf to spit blood. But she resisted by also launching a strong kick to his stomach, a kick that she felt more than he did. Little girl, he whispered angrily, wanting to cut her with his axe, but Kagaya's katana prevented him, starting a rapid exchange of attacks. I always have to be saving this stupid elf's ass, thought the annoyed Oriental woman as she received a cut on her shoulder and one on her leg. Damn it. With great force, she lowered her axe, and Kagaya used her katana as a shield, gritting her teeth as she received such a strong impact, shattering the ground beneath her. His strength is enormous, he thought, feeling his feet creak as his enemy applied more force. At that rate, they would end up broken, just like his sword. But Ryu wouldn't let that stop him, launching an attack while Fulax was focused on the Oriental woman, trying to deliver a powerful blow with his sword. You should get yourself a real sword instead of a wooden one. With great speed, he removed his axe from Kagaya, who lost her balance, receiving a strong knee to the face, and Ryu a strong slap that hit her on the ground, completely stunned by the blow. And when he was about to kill them, allies and Ravi appeared each on one side to attack with their sword, but at the last second he dodged it, making them almost hit each other. Allies had to move her fire sword to avoid piercing her companion, only grazing his shoulder which was burned, and Ravi quickly lowered his weapon to avoid harming the Retid. And with a swift kick he hit them both squarely, sending them flying into a wall and crashing into it. Aki Knees whispered, watching as Fulax put his feet back on the ground, still smiling. Did you notice? Yes, whispered the frustrated cat. He's faster and more agile than in the past. Both remembered being in the dungeon, and although he was very resistant, he wasn't very fast and agile, as they perfectly remembered how most attacks hit him, even if the damage was slight. But now it was different. His speed and agility had increased considerably, allowing him to dodge all of their attacks, even though almost all of them were first class, although it was difficult for him. The guy had become a real nuisance. I thought I said I wanted the trash out of this, Fulax said irritably as more arrows struck him, some lodging lightly in his hard body, watching the two adventurers trying to help. Even though they're ants, they're still annoying. And gripping his axe, he threw it forcefully, plunging into the head of one of them, blood splattering from the impact. "Aha, I really do have great aim," he said with a laugh, launching himself to kill the last archer, who watched in terror as he approached. But before he could touch him, Knees' fist struck his face, making him stumble back. "You're level 3, right?" Knees asked the boy, who was clearly scared. "Why yes, I am." "You should leave if you want to live, this is not an enemy you can face," the wolf advised without taking her eyes off Fulax, who quickly had to defend himself when he saw some enraged hobbits launch themselves at him. But I know you want to help, but you'll only get yourself killed," he whispered, glancing at him out of the corner of his eye. "Go, and if you find someone strong and top-notch, tell them where we are. I just hope we win in the end without anyone else's help. What are you waiting for? Go away." "Why yes." Without thinking twice, the boy turned around and started running away as fast as his level 3 allowed, being completely ignored by Fulax. "It's for the best," Knees whispered, adjusting his finger, which had been fractured when he punched the face of that thing that claimed to be human. "I just hope there's no danger along the way." "That hurt," whispered allies, getting up from the ground after receiving that strong kick, just like Ravi. "You stupid muscle-bound piece of shit," Kagaya said, bleeding from her nose after that knee strike. I can still go on," said Ryu, still slightly dazed by that slap. "Stop moving. Can't you see we want to kill you?" Burling shouted angrily, attacking Fulax alongside his brother, who struggled to dodge their attacks. "Do you think we have a chance?" Aki whispered, turning to look at Knees. "I hope so," replied the she-wolf, watching as he launched a powerful swing with his axe, which the brothers dodged, but it created a gust of wind that forced everyone back a little. "Perfect," Fulax whispered, looking at everyone in the room staring at him seriously. "It seems they're only fighting for those worth fighting for now." "I'm on the list," Ravi said with a proud smile, looking at allies. "What level are you?" Allies asked. 5. 5. Is that clown a level 5? Burling asked, looking disdainfully at Ravi, who frowned again. "There are many level 5s in the Ganesha family, this is better for us," Kagaya said, standing up and ignoring the blood that was still running down her nose. "The more first class we are, the better. This guy is strong but not immortal." "Well said, Kagaya," exclaimed the Retid as her flames burned even brighter. "We can win." They said the same thing in the dungeon and more than half ended up dead. "The same will happen here, except that everyone will die," Fulax mocked, making the two Gulliver brothers clench their teeth in anger. "What are you waiting for? Come and die." And with those words, they all launched into the attack at the same time, causing a big smile to appear on Fulax's face as he raised his axe and struck the ground, creating great destruction. The devastating battle had barely begun. Tic-tac, tic-tac. On the floor of Knossos, a monster with enormous wings and a demon-like appearance was walking while carrying the heads of 3 adventurers in its hands, making that strange clock-like sound. The few mutated monsters he encountered along the way would rather back away and watch him walk than confront him. Their instinct told them they had to leave him alone if they wanted to continue living. "Where are they?" And the deep voice of that thing was heard in that hallway, a voice that would subdue anyone who did not have a fauna. Let's continue." And with those words, that thing continued walking and getting lost in the dark corridors, waiting to find another prey to kill and devour. All he wanted was to cause a complete massacre, and he wouldn't rest until he achieved it. It was what his instinct demanded. To kill everything in that place that wasn't a monster. Adventurers who entered Knossos. 72. Living adventurers. 61. End of chapter. Chapter 71. Belle vs. Abel. 14th floor of Knossos. Two people were walking slowly across the enormous floor which had large pillars all around, few of which had torches, making the place a little dark. Those two people were Belle and Mariou, who had been walking around that place for quite some time without finding anything interesting other than monsters that suddenly appeared. They'll even attacks before they appear, Mariou thought, surprised by the albino's abilities. At times Belle would draw his sword and slash at the air, or so it seemed, since before he could make the cut a monster would emerge from the ground, although it was quickly sliced by him. He senses their presence even before they appear. It's incredible, he thought, looking at the boy's back. He was strong in the past, but now he was much stronger, although the way he obtained that strength wasn't the best. Is something wrong, Mariou? Belle asked in a soft voice, startling the girl a little since he had spoken suddenly. And no, I'm just surprised at how strong and fast you've become, the girl replied, walking a little faster to stand beside him. How is it that you sense the monster's presence even before they appear? You can even see them from afar, even though this floor is dimly lit. Belle just concentrated a little and, after verifying that there were no enemies nearby, began to answer the girl's question. I can hear them. The sound beneath us tells me that in a few seconds a monster will emerge from the ground, and I know exactly where to attack, he replied without taking his eyes off the road ahead. And I can see them from afar in this darkness without any difficulty, since being transformed into a half-monster has enhanced my senses. Incredible, Mariou whispered, surprised by the albino's newfound abilities. But I don't like you calling yourself a monster. But that's who I am. No, you're not, the girl denied again, stepping in front of Belle to stop him from walking any further. You're bellcranel, a member of the Astrea family and my friend, so don't you ever call yourself a monster again. Mary. If you keep calling yourself that, I'll get angry with you. Okay, he whispered, making the girl smile happily. Perfect, she said, satisfied. Although I'm still surprised by your newfound senses, though I imagine it's a bit uncomfortable hearing so much more than usual. Doesn't your head hurt? Belle put on a serious expression, confusing Mariou, although her confusion turned to surprise when she felt him take her by the waist and pull her towards him, placing her on his chest. Belle. But before she could say anything else, he slashed swiftly with his sword, cutting into a monster that emerged from beneath the earth where the girl had been standing. Wow, she whispered in surprise. Belle slowly pulled away from Mariou and looked into her eyes. Are you okay? See. Answering your question, yes, it's uncomfortable to hear more than usual, but I don't care and I can endure it if it's to protect you from threats like that before they hurt you. Mariou's cheeks flushed slightly upon hearing those words, seeing the gentle look in the albino's eyes. Let's keep going and remember not to leave my side, and with those words Belle continued walking alongside Mariou, who was looking down, a little embarrassed. How can he act like that after saying those words? She thought, glancing at him out of the corner of her eye with a calm expression. In the past, he recalled that although he wasn't excessively embarrassed, he did get a little shy when praising any of them. Unlike now, it seemed that that kind of shame was no longer in him. Belle had really changed a lot. Everything felt strange to Mariou. It wasn't that she disliked her new personality, on the contrary, she liked it as much as her previous one, but it was as if they were two different Belles and at the same time the same. It was confusing for her. Although to be honest she would like Belle to express a little more of what he felt, since he always carried that calmer serious expression before he showed a little more emotion, but suddenly stopped doing so, precisely the day he spoke with Althea. Sometimes she wondered what had happened to make her start acting this way. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable being with me. But then Belle spoke, pulling Mariou out of her thoughts. What do you mean? I'm aware that my personality isn't what you're used to. I tried to act like I used to, but I just can't. I'd be showing you a fake, Belle, and that's something I don't want, he whispered, turning around to face her. I'm sorry for being like this. No. Mariou shouted upon hearing that, grabbing Belle's hand. Being with you isn't awkward. It never will be. Mary. I like being with you. It doesn't matter what your personality is like. I'll never feel uncomfortable being by your side. So don't say that again. Belle just looked at the girl with slight surprise, then smiled slightly, a genuine smile. I understand. I'm sorry for assuming something that wasn't true, he said, gently stroking the girl's hand with his thumb. Thank you, Mariou, for accepting me just as I am. Don't thank me, she whispered shyly, realizing how she'd acted. But I have a question. And? Do you remember me? Do you remember everything we've been through together since we met? Not much vague stuff, he replied, looking away. If there was one thing he hated, it was not remembering all the beautiful moments he had lived with them. One of the things he longed for was for that amnesia to disappear and to be able to remember everything completely. But I know your name and I know you're very important to me, and that's more than enough for now. Mariu smiled happily upon hearing those words. She had wanted to know these things for a long time, but never had the opportunity until now that they were alone in that part of Knossos. It wasn't the best time, but she really wanted to know. I understand, don't worry, I know you'll soon remember everything you experienced with me and the others. Once this war is over everything will go back to normal. I hope so, Belle whispered, looking down. Let's continue. And with those words, they both continued walking through that floor, now with Mariu much more motivated to help Belle in that war and return home. Everything will be as before, Belle thought without stopping walking. Would everything be the same once the war was over? Would he ever have that happy life with them again? Would he ever remember all his lost memories? Could I be happy once all that was over? Out of the corner of my eye, I turned to look at Mariu, who was walking with a slight smile beside me. I'd better stop thinking about those things. My priority is protecting Mariu and not letting anything happen to her, he thought seriously. I shouldn't have any distractions in my mind. Some stairs. The girl whispered, stopping next to Belle in front of some stairs that led down. It seemed to be the end of that floor since there was nothing else around. It seems we're standing in front of the entrance to the next floor, Belle said, sensing a strange presence in that place. It was like a great murderous aura. That only meant the enemy was down there. What do we do? Do we continue exploring this floor and see if there's anything else, or do we go downstairs? Mariu asked, oblivious to the enormous murderous aura emanating from that place. I couldn't feel it, or rather. It wasn't directed at her. Elle just watched Mariu, noticing her nervousness, but she did her best not to show it, probably not wanting to be a burden to him. If he were alone he would have gone down without hesitation, but he was with her, and he didn't want to expose her to great danger, even though she was practically already in that danger the moment she entered Knossos. The best thing would be to go down. But before Belle could say anything, Mariu spoke again. There are likely companions down below who might need our help. You're strong, and I'm a healer. We can help if there's anyone down there, she said, showing determination. We've walked on this floor for a long time, and all we've seen are monsters, so it's time to go down. Belle's gaze relaxed upon hearing those words. She didn't know why she was worried. Mariu had proven to be a strong girl, perhaps the weakest in the family, but she had shown herself to be brave. It wasn't because he wasn't afraid. In fact, I could see that he was very afraid, but he still had enough courage to go down and help the others. That made her a brave and strong woman in his eyes. Besides the fact that he was by her side and he had promised that no one would ever hurt a loved one in front of him again, he wouldn't allow anything to happen to her. You're right, the best thing would be to go down and see if there are any enemies or anyone who needs help. And with those words they both started to go down those stairs, a descent which only had a torch every few meters, making the place much darker than normal. Luckily Belle could see perfectly and Mariu, although she did not have incredible eyesight like him, saw enough to go down without problem. That killer instinct is getting stronger and stronger, Belle thought, sharpening his gaze as they continued to descend. The echoes of footsteps were all they could hear, making the atmosphere even more tense. The silence didn't give either of them any confidence. Do you think we're many floors below? Mariu asked, wanting to break the silence. It's likely, although we're still not sure how many floors Knossos has, although I heard from some members of Evilis that the floors go beyond the 18th floor, he whispered his answer, remembering how he had tortured one of the high commands in the past to gather information and learn that. Wow, to think this place was made by mortals, it almost seems unbelievable, Mariu said, surprised by how enormous the place was. The person who made this was someone very dedicated to their work. You're right, at least we have to give him credit for that. They both continued down that long slope which seemed to have no end, thinking for a moment that they were in some kind of enemy illusion or something like that. But all that disappeared the moment they saw the top of the stairs, which led to another long hallway that was this time lit with torches, and at the end of which they could see some huge closed doors. I don't hear any kind of noise, Belle whispered, starting to walk alongside his companion. Well, at least we know there are no close companions and no enemies either, the girl said, far from feeling relieved. As Belle got closer to the door, he smelled a faint scent of blood in the air, which was a little annoying, and he began to wonder what was behind that door. Whatever it was, he knew it would be troublesome, but he was ready for anything. Their steps stopped the moment they reached the enormous door with strange drawings on it, which they couldn't understand. They just seemed like scribbles. Mariu, behind me, Belle whispered, placing both hands on the door. And the girl, obeying, stood behind Belle, nervous but alert for anything that might happen. Okay, let's go. With those thoughts, Belle applied force and began to open the enormous door wide, hearing the loud noise of a huge rock being moved, a sign that an ordinary person could not open it. And the moment the door was wide open, a soft breeze hit both their faces, making them see inside the place. "Wow," whispered Mariu in amazement. The place was completely different from the floor they had just been in, which was just a semi-dark place full of huge pillars. Quite the opposite of that new apartment they were in. Instead of a labyrinth, it was a gigantic room with torches everywhere, completely illuminating the place. More than a dungeon, it resembled the enormous hall of some medieval castle, since on each side, there were mannequins in a row wearing enormous warrior armor, serving as decoration. And at the far end of that room was what looked like a throne, and behind that throne was another huge door. "There's someone in the distance," whispered Mariu, still behind Belle. And he just stared seriously as a person sat on that throne, unable to make out who it was because of the distance. But he did feel the enormous murderous instinct that was being unleashed. Without saying anything to Mariu Belle, he began walking towards that throne, gripping his sword as the girl followed him. The closer he got, the more he could make out the person's appearance. Long hair. Brown skin. Red tattoos all over his face and body. And a much emptier look than the one he once had. When he was about 20 meters away, Belle stopped walking, staring at the man sitting on the throne, who had not taken his eyes off him at any time. And Mariu thought, surprised to recognize him. "He's strong," Belle thought, certain of it just by looking at him. Silence completely filled the place, making the atmosphere heavy and hostile. Belle knew that all that hostility and bloodlust was directed towards him, so he returned the same by sharpening his gaze. "Bellcranel," the man whispered without getting up from that throne. His voice was calm but at the same time full of hatred. "Do I know you?" Belle asked, raising an eyebrow as Mariu looked at him in surprise. "Doesn't he remember?" the girl thought, realizing that much of Belle's amnesia was still present. The man's brow furrowed in anger as he heard the albino's question. "I feel like I know him from somewhere," Belle thought, watching as the man stood up, leaving the throne empty. He wasn't wearing a shirt, leaving his torso exposed, which was covered in tattoos. All he was wearing was a pair of pants. He didn't even have a weapon with him. "I had heard from Sava that you had lost your memories, and I can see that it's true," she whispered, looking at him with that same expression. Belle's face turned angry when he heard Sava's name, implying that he was another ally of that bastard. That was more than enough to attack him. "Apparently you forgot who I am." "I don't remember anything about you, to be honest," he said, although it was a lie since he felt like he was someone he knew. "I see. I wonder how much you've forgotten. Tell me one thing. Do you remember all the people you've killed throughout your life?" the man asked, taking a small dagger from his pocket and beginning to cut his arm. "Not really," Belle replied disinterestedly, gesturing for Mariu to step back. "If I killed them, it was for a reason, so it's not worth dwelling on them." "I see you really are a damn piece of trash." The small dagger pierced the guy's arm much deeper, causing more blood to gush out. "What is he doing?" Belle thought, puzzled, not understanding why he was hurting himself. "My name is Abel, recorded in your memory, and don't forget it this time." Abel, Belle whispered, puzzled, still unable to remember, but he felt familiar. Meanwhile, Mariu had stepped back a few meters, looking around with concern, remembering how Belle had been seriously injured by that man in the past. "I didn't want anything bad to happen to him, but Belle was much stronger than he was back then." But Abel also looked different. It was as if he was no longer the person he once was. "Many people were fused with some spirit and lost their sanity and all sense of reason," Abel whispered, dropping the dagger as thick drops of blood trickled from his arm to the ground. "I'm the only one who has managed to retain my sanity." Belle became wary as he felt the murderous instinct growing stronger. "The only reason I keep walking is because of my enormous thirst for revenge," he said, finally showing another expression on his face, an expression of anger. "Revenge for the death of my brother Cain and my mother." Pain, Belle thought, feeling a slight pain in his head upon hearing that name, an annoying and painful pain. But painful in another aspect, having the vague image of a little girl smiling at him. "It's rather frustrating that the person I want revenge on doesn't remember anything," Abel whispered, taking a step forward even though his arm was still bleeding. "It's like it's an empty revenge. But it doesn't matter, I've sacrificed so much for this that I have to do it. I sacrificed my humanity and what I once called home to obtain this power so much. So you finally decided to help free Mr. Sava from jail. I asked you many times and you always refused. What made you change your mind?" Noah said at the casino doors. "Both. Do you feel good after betraying your people for revenge?" A smiling Sava asked one day after he was released from prison. "What is it you want?" "Han. Tea so much." "See Cain," was the whisper that escaped to young Abel as he watched his older brother's head being crushed by a rock again and again by that red-eyed albino boy. "Both." "Mom?" was the horrified cry that Abel let out the moment he entered his house after a day of work, observing his mother hanging from the ceiling of the living room. Depression led her to suicide. "I sacrificed so much to get revenge on you, Bellcranel. You ruined my life." And with an expression full of anger, Abel created a huge red sword with his own spilled blood, causing Belle and Mariu to open their eyes in surprise as they also saw the wound on his arm heal. And at great speed Abel took off from the ground, leaving a crater where he had been standing, and in the blink of an eye, appeared in front of the albino with his enormous sword ready to kill him. "Your desire is revenge." It was the whisper that came from Belle, seeing how the enormous red sword was only a few centimeters from his head, looking into Abel's eyes full of anger. And in the last second Belle ducked, passing the enormous sword above him, creating destruction behind him and a blizzard due to the power of that attack. "Same as me." And in a swift movement, Belle launched a quick slash with his sword, cutting off Abel's arm and splattering blood everywhere. "Even though I don't even know who you are," I whispered with an indifferent look after having cut off the arm. "You." Belle was surprised to see how the severed arm never fell to the ground, raising his gaze slightly to see how the arm continued to float in the air. "No. I wasn't floating." The blood itself had prevented the arm from coming off as if it were some kind of sticky thing. "What?" Belle whispered in surprise, watching as the blood drew his arm back towards him and rejoined his body as if it had never been cut. "Well then I'll have to remind you who I am with my fists," Abel whispered hatefully, throwing a powerful punch which Belle couldn't dodge, surprised by that ability. "Belle." The punch hit him squarely, sending the albino flying like a projectile towards one of the walls and impacting it, raising a curtain of smoke and sending some pieces of armor flying from the dolls that were arranged on the wall. Mariu just watched, worried, wanting to go and help him, but she froze when she felt Abel turn to look at her, believing that he would now attack her. But that only lasted a few seconds as he ignored her and turned his gaze back to where the albino had fallen. "Come out already, I know that blow didn't hurt you," he said, annoyed, seeing that no one was coming out of the curtain of dust. "I was simply surprised that you managed to reattach your arm just like that." Belle slowly emerged from the curtain of dust with a serious expression, now realizing he was not facing just any opponent. A little blood trickled down his forehead from a small wound, which healed in a matter of seconds. "Well, we're not so different, really." Abel, a human who was fused with a spirit, greatly enhancing his magic and abilities, allowing him to control all that power that takes away the use of reason from many. "I highly doubt I can attach an arm to my body," Belle whispered, starting to walk slowly with that curtain of dust behind him. Belle, a human who died and was resurrected as a creature with absurdly increased strength and other attributes, with much of his sanity hanging by a thread that could break at any moment. Two humans who lost a lot in their lives and whose greatest motivation is their enormous desire for revenge. "This time there won't be a dwarf to save your life." "I don't even know what you're talking about." Belle contra Abel. His second fight in a long time had begun. A bloody battle. Haha. The echoes of footsteps were the only thing that could be heard in some long corridors where a beautiful woman with purple hair was walking slowly with her sword in hand. Although he had a relaxed expression, the truth was that he was alert to any kind of attack. That woman was Galadia. "An artificial dungeon, I think this is the most unnecessary thing ever built when there's a real one right there," Galadia thought with boredom. "Well, it turned out alright, so I won't deny her credit." The purple-haired girl had been walking alone through those lonely corridors for a long time, not finding anyone, neither an enemy nor an ally, and honestly, that was starting to bore her. "Don't come down here for anything, let's see if something appears, even if it's just a goblin," the woman pleaded, swinging her sword from side to side. "Huh." While crossing through that labyrinth, I observed a slightly larger than normal Almridge hitting the wall, trying to knock it down. Seeing that curious monster made him think of his beloved student. "I wonder how Belle is," I whispered, letting out a sigh. "I hope he's alright and hasn't run into that damn Sava." Upon hearing Galadia's whispers, the Admiral stopped hitting the wall and turned to look at her with a fierce gaze. "The city has changed so much in such a short time," she continued whispering, her gaze melancholic. "But in my eyes, he will always be my dear albino boy." The Admiral, with a predator's gaze, lunged towards Galadia, ready to kill her, but she continued to pay him no attention. "But even so, that idiot didn't waste any time," she said, frowning. "So many pretty girls are after him and he treats them all nicely, even giving them more attention than he gives me. Could it be because of our age difference?" In a leap, the Almridge reached her to sink his claws into the woman, but she grabbed him tightly with her hands, preventing him from moving and causing the monstrous rabbit to start kicking in the air. "Do you think if I were the same age as Belle, he'd look at me differently than he does at his friends?" I asked, seeing the Admiral's angry expression. In his eyes, "I'm just his good teacher, but I don't like that title anymore, and the more time passes, the more he feels drifting away from me. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr would like to be 18 again, my golden age. The rabbit, tired of her not letting go, simply dropped his paws, hanging in the air, waiting for Galatea to stop talking. Am I not pretty? Not to brag, but I feel like I haven't aged in years. I look like I'm 25. But even so, that fool pays more attention to that conceited Asian woman, or that she-wolf who, although I like her, I hate that she's so close to him. Besides, Belle has a fetish for she-wolves. I sound like a teenager saying this. Once this war is over and I've made sure Belle is alright, I'm leaving the city to travel the world again. I think it's for the best, she said, letting out a dejected sigh. Haha, I'm sure Belle will miss me a lot when I leave and will come looking for me. How clever of you, Galatea. As she said those words, Galatea bent down and left the admiral on the ground, who simply ignored her and began to walk away from her. Hey, didn't you want to fight? Galatea asked, but she was ignored as the mutant rabbit disappeared into the darkness. PFFT, monsters. And turning around, Galatea resumed her walk through those lonely corridors, hoping to find something sooner or later. I wonder if the others have already encountered any enemies, he thought, walking slowly, making crosses all over his face. Luckily, she had a good memory, so she remembered perfectly which path she took, no matter how many crossroads she passed. I don't want to be negative, but it's likely some of them have already died. I think it's been an hour since we came in here, so casualties are inevitable, I whispered, a little frustrated. I just hope those silly girls and Belle are okay. Even though their training made them really strong, they'll manage in here as long as they don't run into something with absurd power. Nah, I'm not worried about anything. I'm sure they'll be fine. And so Galatea continued walking calmly through those corridors, although seconds later she stopped. Slowly Galatea turned around and observed the darkness behind her. She didn't know why, but for a brief second she felt something strange inside her. Like a bad feeling. How strange, whispered the woman, scratching her cheek. The only time he felt that was in the town when he felt a strange pang in his heart as he was walking through its streets. Days later he received the news that Belle had been killed by Evilus in Orario. It's nothing, I'm sure of it, she thought, continuing her walk, only this time with a slight frown caused by the strange feeling that had come over her. I hope those silly girls are alright. 7th floor of Knossos. The sound of drops constantly falling to the floor could be heard in that silent apartment. The place that was once orderly now had destruction everywhere. The hand which was covered in blood and kept dripping, refusing to let go of its sword. The bloodied face. Feet that did not touch the ground. Someone had that person by the neck with an enormous hand. And other people were scattered across the floor, lying on the ground. Poor. It was the whisper that escaped from a deep voice. Ah. The person's red hair matched the blood that ran down their face and dripped onto their hands and sword, feeling as if the oxygen was slowly running out. You didn't last long. That girl was allies. The group on the 7th floor had fallen to Fulax. End of chapter. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.